Welcome, my friends and enemies. Glad you are here. Once again, we have the Council of the Light. What little of us remain. That's the rest are still, well, not here, doing other things. One day, hopefully, we'll have the whole group back together and regular, I suppose. So, thank you for showing up. This is kind of a part 2 / its own video because it's a different topic, but it's about the same topic as previous grouped one. It was obviously not the last one. The last one was a solo video of mine. So today we're talking about Star Wars again, but we're talking about not the Force, since we unanimously came to the decision that the Force is incoherent and non-consistent all the time.
Oh, I don't recall that.
You weren't paying attention, good sir.
We agree to disagree.
I never agree to any of that.
Well, again,
But
you weren't really.
Did you submit to the EU your permission to agree or disagree yet, though? You might
No, which is why I did not agree.
He didn't agree with you, and he didn't agree with me. So it tells you all I need to know.
He's got to follow through 17 subcommittees of the European Parliament to get that permission slip.
To be fair, yeah. I mean,
But
he
I
is a
think
common,
I'm ending up on Matt's side in this.
that is completely incoherent. Okay, I agree.
Anywho,
that's for the other video, and if I can ever get somebody on to further extrapolate that. So this time we're talking about the Jedi and what they are and are not allowed to do according to their connection with the Force. Despite the Force being incoherent,
are we talking
have
about
this.
Lucas canon or Disney canon?
I do not care about Disney canon because it's
Okay.
not real canon. And I want to have this here. I'll throw out a little idea.
Do we
and-
count EU canon?
The what?
The
The EU?
expanded
Well,
EU canon?
EU is more or less accepted by George, so I would consider.
Well,
that
Lucas canon in the old days worked as there's 4 levels, right? There's the movies, and all products George worked directly on, like the Clone Wars and George's interviews and stuff, right? Then there's the next level of products, which is basically the novels that George approved, right? Then there's the novels that George knew of and didn't stop. Then there's like the comics and stuff like that, and video games on the bottom level, right?
Yeah, but there's another level as well, which to me is there's the creator and then there's owner.
No, I'm telling you, in Wookiee, in the Holocron, which is the database that George Lucas established to keep track of continuity, there were those 4 levels.
I know. I'm saying aside from that, there's a parallel level. One is owner and one is creator. So like George created Star Wars, and then Disney owns Star Wars. So
doesn't
one
matter.
has that does because one has a higher priority because
No, one of the other doesn't exist.
It doesn't matter who created it, it matters who owned it.
well, it does matter when they overlap their stories.
They don't.
Yeah, but no, because
Yeah. Because
it's not
okay,
the
if you
original
have
creation, then it's
episode 4, 5, and 6 as the originals, like that's literally Star Wars existence. Everything else has to be built around that because it came first. So
Sure.
if you have that, and then you take those same characters like Han, Luke, and Leia, and throw them in Disney Star Wars, but you do it in a way in which contradicts everything about them and how they were even part of it. Like, let's say Star Wars, George Lucas Star Wars comes out, and it's like, oh, Han, Luke, and Leia are the heroes. And then you come to Disney and like, no, they're actually they're Sith. They're the complete, like they're polar opposite of how they are actually introduced. They both can't be correct. They can't both be the same.
The second one is a fan creation. Wow.
Yes.
No, the difference
the second one is also
George,
owners,
no, in George's
not creators.
But owners doesn't matter.
The owner matters for purposes of debating.
So you're saying that everything Disney creates is not canon.
Yeah.
It's Disney.
That's not how everybody. Well, like, that's not how everybody agrees. That's my point. So the same thing is like if Robert Jordan writes Wheel of Time, and somebody buys the Wheel of Time title and buys all the books, ownership, everything, but they write something else, they own it, just like the author owns it.
What you do is you differentiate between the canon. You say Jordan canon versus Bob Smith canon.
Yes,
yeah,
but
sure.
Then you don't have.
But then Bob Smith canon is not part
canon.
of the original story.
It's its own thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's a separate entity entirely.
I don't think you guys are picking up what I'm putting down, but that's okay.
No, I'm saying what you're putting down is irrelevant.
No, because that's the thing. People's opinions on the topic versus the actual facts of the topic. When you say who has the right to change or alter,
The person who owns it.
there you go. But is
Okay,
it
I would say
canon?
only the creator.
Not necessarily. The big one I would say would be comics. If you have comics written about Superman, and all of a sudden somebody else owns it, they have the legal rights, they have the authorship rights, they've got everything, and they make him a Nazi. That's not canon.
Well, no,
Because-
then what you say is, you differentiate between ownership. You say the previous owner is one canon. You say, and you'll go like we do with Star Wars. We'll say, is it Lucas canon or is it Disney canon?
See, I can do that if they're in different universes telling different stories, but when they overlap, that's where you can't differentiate them.
Oh yeah, you could very easily.
So if you have Superman being truth, justice, and the American way, and he's always protecting people, to now he's a Nazi and he's trying to kill everybody.
Yeah, that's not the same.
But the story transmits him from being truth, justice, and American way into the Nazi.
The new owner chose to devalue their product and make that other story. That's all you do.
Yes, but it's still in the same canon.
No, it's not.
It technically is, though. It's a continuation of the same story.
It's in a different canon.
It's a horrible way. But I agree that it's a horrible way to deal with the character, but it still technically is that character. And of course,
no, it's
dogs are going to go nuts. But it is. Because they're the creators.
Legally, it's not.
Legally?
No, common sensely, it's not.
I was gonna say, what are you saying legally? Like law, like you could sue them because it's not canon. And the other one's saying it's just not logically. I agree, it's not logical
canon. Because, again, product A and product B. If it's like, I'm trying to.
If the author themselves, like if George Lucas comes out and completely derails his own canon, you would consider that canon, no?
To his canon, yes.
Yeah.
Even if it contradicts his own canon.
He's done that multiple times, by the way.
If his own canon is contradictory, then too bad.
He has done that multiple times, by the way.
Does it become a multiverse canon? Does it become an actual canon? Because if a story becomes less coherent and contradictory to its own standards, like in one sense the Force is this, but in the next one, well, yeah, there's that too. But I'm saying, like, in terms of how the story connects, because I know Matt's a big proponent of the author can do whatever they want.
As long as they own it.
As long as they own it. But my point is their ownership is irrelevant.
Yeah, I agree.
The canon is canon or it's not.
Yeah.
Ownership is irrelevant.
Again, if you're going to debate...
But I also believe that the author can't come in and destroy his own story through stuff that breaks it. Not that he just starts telling bad stories. That can be canon. But him telling bad stories as opposed to things that blatantly contradict his own works.
But yeah, George did that.
In what way?
Don't you all remember? I thought I could train Anakin better than Yoda in the original trilogy, and Yoda never even offered to train Anakin in the prequel trilogy.
Well, that could have been not on screen.
Yeah, that there's a whole lot of empty space in between.
If it's not on screen, then it didn't happen.
Well, you obviously didn't read the books in between, just like Disney wants you to.
It never happened in the EU old. I read almost all the old EU books. It never happened in George's canon at all. Okay.
Well, so wait. Are we saying that something has to definitely happen on screen, or else it doesn't exist?
I'm saying that
because this feels a bit like Rings of
Power.
If you're going to make an assertion, you have to have evidence, right? There is no evidence that Yoda off screen said, "I want to train him."
But argument from silence.
No, the evidence is that Obi-Wan says that.
Correct. That Yoda.
Well, I don't know the exact phrase, of course.
But then in the prequel trilogy, we never see that.
Okay, so are you guys familiar with argument from silence?
I know.
It's okay if you're not. I'll explain it, but I'm just asking you if you know. I don't know.
I don't know how I would phrase it exactly, but I know what you mean.
An argument from silence means if there's nothing said about it, it can be dismissed. But it's like there could be something about it. We just don't have direct evidence for it right this second. So an argument from silence is saying there's nothing written about it, therefore it didn't happen. But there could be something that George writes later on.
Well, no, that's not the point I'm making, right? If you're going to say something like, Anakin went to the bathroom on Tuesday, right? You have to have evidence Anakin went to the bathroom on Tuesday, right?
Yes.
But if you say Anakin goes to
And
the
if you then
bathroom,
never mention anything about bathrooms again,
but you don't. But
it's
if
presumed that they
Anakin-
still use the bathroom.
because that's biological
Yes.
function. You could assume.
Yes, but I'm saying like
because why else would you specifically say
a common
argument
Anakin
from silence.
went to the bathroom on Tuesday. He couldn't have been on Tatooine killing the Sand People on Tuesday. Like
Okay,
that,
okay.
But he could have used the bathroom on Tatooine to kill the Sand People. with
Well,
his
maybe
smell.
that's true too. But the point I'm making is, if you make a specific assertion, you have to have evidence for it. Whereas
Sometimes
something
that
That
which is reasonable, you don't need. So, like, for example, a common argument from silence people like to make as a rhetorical response to somebody's work is that, well, we don't ever see them on screen use the bathroom, so they clearly don't use the bathroom. And it's like, but that's an argument from silence because I shouldn't have to explain that they use the bathroom because they have a biological function.
It's reasonable because you can observe the evidence on your own.
I can't observe anything. I can't observe in the entirety of all of Star Wars canon. Not once do I observe a single person using the bathroom.
Is Anakin a human?
Yes.
I don't know. Is he?
Well, maybe. He's technically Force created,
they're called
so I don't know.
In Star Wars. They're called humans in Star Wars.
Well, he's human. He's humanoid, but is he human?
They actually call him human. Yes.
Well, they could call him human because they don't know what else to call him. But he's technically Force-born. So what do you call him? Force-born?
You're nitpicking, okay?
Pedantry is my specialty. Thank you.
Obi-Wan human? He's not
I don't know.
Human, right? So
I don't know where Obi-Wan's from because I don't know where he's born.
Do humans exist?
I have no evidence of his parents existing. Therefore, I just assume they exist because he exists.
Well, I've read books where he's called human, so you can observe that.
Maybe they're not canon. Have you ever thought about
well,
that?
they're certain Lucas canon. The point is, reasonable means you can reason on your own by observing and gathering evidence that is parent.
Sure. Yeah.
Reasonable means. There's
still
evidence
your example of Obi-Wan training instead of Yoda is not a good one.
Because at any point in time, from Qui-Gon's death to Anakin turning to the dark side, anybody at the Jedi Temple could have trained him in some shape or form or capacity.
But they didn't want to.
Doesn't mean they did. Doesn't mean they want to. Doesn't mean anything.
The whole thing about Anakin and the reason Palpatine could. Ready?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So all I was saying is, in Lucas's canon, not this Disney garbage, right? One of the main reasons Palpatine could manipulate Anakin so much was outside of Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, almost all of the Jedi Masters and Knights basically didn't want to associate with Anakin. Okay, now the younglings.
I don't want to associate with the one Force-born human being in existence.
He was considered,
that would look bad.
He was considered untrustworthy and dangerous because he was too old to be trained, right? So. The Jedi were very indoctrinated.
But he was like 12 or something.
That's considered too old. They take Padawans and younglings, I should say.
Imagine going into the Jedi Council. You're all too old. Get out of here.
Yeah, literally. It's like 4 years old. You have to join the Jedi by the time you're like 4 or something, or they won't train you. You know.
I'm sorry if the Force didn't give a crap about the Jedi's preferences.
So anyway,
can they even
get back on it? So, and this is the interesting concept, and I'll get to the most poignant moment in all Star Wars.
With other alien races that have different lifespans.
Well, again,
Mundi being one of them.
Lucas, yeah, he can live in negative time. You know,
he can live 47 years before he was born.
So apparently, can Darth Plagueis? He can live in negative time too. You know, So anyway, the Anakin gained a reputation as a hero and all that sort of stuff. So all the younglings and Padawans admired him, right? But the older Jedi Knights and Masters were kept a distance to him, and that was something Palpatine exploited.
And then he still murdered all of them. Wow.
Well, I'll get there. I'm getting there.
They admire me. Makes it easier to kill him.
Instead of bonding with his fellow Jedi of his same age, he would go to Palpatine all the time and talk, and Palpatine mentored him, right? You know,
I get that stuff.
you get to the most poignant, like emotional scene to me in all of Star Wars, is when Anakin goes to the Jedi Temple, and he's told to kill them all. He goes into the younglings in the room. The first time he is called a Jedi Master is by the first kid he kills. And in one of the novels, if I recall correctly, that was the one moment he almost faltered when the kid calls him master.
Yeah.
So
well, it's when you don't show anybody love or any of those kind of things that people thrive on or require in their just life.
Well, he was
in general.
getting normal for Obi-Wan and Padme. He had and people outside the
and
Jedi.
stuff like that. But my point is that like he wanted validation inside the Jedi,
Right,
and none
yeah.
was ever given to him
But it
outside of
also-
obviously Obi-Wan.
That was Palpatine explained that, and then Palpatine was also like mind graping him basically constantly.
Yeah.
While he was like Anakin was having legitimate Force visions, and Palpatine was twisting them to be the worst possible outcomes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I totally get that. But what I'm saying is that let's say they're like, we don't want to associate for whatever reason, but there's a situation in which they have to interact with Anakin for whatever reason, and in that time frame, they even just give him like a paragraph of information or knowledge about something that can count as training, just like Yoda spent very little time.
You're trying. You're
I don't
reaching
think
for
that
technicality.
counts as training, though.
Well, it depends on what it is. If it's somebody like Yoda explaining the Force to him in a specific way, that counts as training. Like explaining something that you don't know.
You're reaching for anything to sort of.
I'm not reaching. I'm saying that if a situation could happen like that, that
if
could
one of
count
them
as
told him how to
interaction.
If one of them told him to use the Force to pick up a pencil, that qualifies as training. So you're right.
I'm talking like if you're like, okay, lightsaber
If I
training, they say
explain, like
if you
in 3 minutes, for example, how motion works or something, that doesn't mean I trained you in physics.
but if it's something that I can apply immediately and I do apply it and it works, and I'm like,
No,
I can
still
add
doesn't
this to
mean
my
you've been trained in
repertoire.
Physics.
Not in physics, but in that thing, that piece of knowledge you gave me, I trained in. So
I think giving a piece of knowledge can be considered
how
training.
about this? You
It
guys
has to be a practical skill.
Well, yes, but if you're teaching somebody about the Force and they're using the Force all the time and they can connect to the Force in a newer, unique way that helps them become more powerful or use it in a different way that they can actually apply
When
it.
specifically did Yoda do that? You're making that assertion. When specifically did Yoda do that?
I'm making no assertion that it happened, but I'm not making an assertion it didn't happen.
Then it didn't happen.
No, because that's an argument from silence.
No, if you are saying that
Yes,
it happened,
that's exactly it.
you have to
There's
bring
way
evidence.
too many gaps of information and knowledge that we don't have. That's like
Mhm.
saying Yoda
Like,
and
isn't there like
spoke
a
in
10-year
15
time
years.
skip or something in between Phantom Menace and Clone Wars?
Well, yeah, he's 12 years
Like
old
the-
to whatever age he is.
Yeah.
60. Is he 18
It's
by that
12
point? Or
years.
is he still
I
like?
think it's 12 years.
So he's like
I
24.
have no
or
idea
whatever?
what the age. I just randomly
In
guessed.
in
brain
12
would say
years.
Right.
In 12 years, are you saying Yoda never gave any words of wisdom or anything that could
I'm
potentially
saying-
help with the growth of
I'm
Anakin at
saying-
all?
I'm saying that
'Cause I'm not
in
making
order
that claim.
to make that assertion that he did, you have to say give the evidence when he did it. Okay. George specifically made changes with the prequels,
George is a good storyteller, but he's not a good world builder.
but he owns it, so you have to go with his story.
Yes, but you're basing things off of world building.
I'm basing things off of what he put on the screen, and then what was in the novels he authorized.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that there's not a lot of information in there.
But if you but that's the only evidence you have to make assertions.
There's evidence of what did happen, and there's no evidence that something else didn't. That's the
So
problem.
you can't make any arguments based on it.
It's a double negative. I'm not making arguments for or against.
You're saying that Yoda must have taught him how to flip his lightsaber with a one time in the temple.
I'm saying that if there was an interaction between Yoda and Anakin, because I don't think Yoda was actively
why is
hating
this
on him.
actually
If is not a synonym for is.
Yeah.
Say that again.
Why is this actually important again? Specifically, whether or not Yoda taught
We were
him
talking about
trick
We were
ones?
talking about whether writers can change their own product or whatever, right?
Well,
So
we're talking about contradictions within
okay.
ownership and authorship.
you
How's
can
it
find people who
contradicting?
break it down like crazy. There are other contradictions between the prequel trilogy and the original trilogy, right? And George made those
Well, I
changes.
mean, midichlorians was a dumb thing to do, but he did it
but,
anyway. I
Yeah,
don't know
it's
why he
not
did.
but that got fixed in the EU.
I wouldn't say it's a contradiction, but I would say it's a bad world building. But again, it's
a
well
bit
known that he's a bad
sure.
world builder, but he's a
But
good
that,
storyteller.
that got fixed in the EU, so I'm not worried about midichlorians.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, okay, in terms of an interaction of the author destroying their own content, because let's say that Robert Jordan for the first half of the series writes like himself in the first half of the series
Yeah.
in the books, but then the second half he writes like a Wheel of Time showrunner. Is that all canon, or is part of it canon? Because it's still the author, but one part
It's all
completely
canon.
retcons everything.
It's all canon so long as Jordan owns it.
Would it not be canon if he didn't own it? Is George
Then
Lucas
if
Star
a
Wars
new
not
owner
canon
gets it,
because he
if a
doesn't
new
own
owner
it?
gets it, like if you got it and said those 6 books don't count, then it's not canon anymore.
I mean, it's canon, just not to those people.
No, if you own the product and say those 6 books don't count anymore, it's not canon.
Well, I don't think ownership necessarily matters here.
The reason ownership matters is because you're going to debate about a particular
Ownership only
topic.
ever matters in legality. It doesn't matter literally in any other
It also
sense.
mattered in logic in debating because if you're going to debate about a topic, right? And if you don't say, okay, this is the owner of the product and how they set it up, you can't actually debate about it because you have to take their particular thing. It's like, okay, in Sage, when someone submits a paper to a journal, right?
Sure.
And you have to take what's in their paper and what they cite. You can't go, in the journal of let's say the paper is physics, right? You can't go, in the journal of anthropology, scientist John Jones said that apes can split atoms. I mean, you can't just go do that. You have to take.
I mean, you can say it, but it's
you can
not
say
true.
it, but you can't. It's not logic. It's not logically allowed in talking about the paper in
it's not going to be
in
accepted
nature,
as peer-reviewed fact. Is the difference?
Yeah, you have to take the product that's presented by the presenter who owns it and what they cite as sources. The same thing if you're talking about. This is why I keep saying we're talking about.
But you can cite that random guy that says that.
But it's not.
It's
not
going
everyone's
to
going to go. What did you smoke today?
To use your analogy, if somebody does a peer-reviewed paper and they do really, really good work on this product over here, and then they do more work on that same on that whatever that topic was, and that next half is just complete utter garbage and is not true in any shape or form, you don't say that that's one complete all good because it's the same author. But you say this half is actual trash and this half is actually good. No. I'm saying if it's the author and one side's good because it's well structured, it's well thought out, and it has lots of things backing it.
That's not
the
why
second half is Wheel of Time show.
A canon is not really a thing in scientific papers, so.
But you're completely missing it.
A scientific paper is not.
If you make a scientific paper on one side and it's really good and it's backed and it's fact checked,
but that's irrelevant.
People who agree with you.
That's irrelevant.
And then you have another one that's completely not. It's completely.
Yeah, but those are two separate papers. So
No, I'm saying it's a continuation of the same research. Okay, it's just completely off the rails.
Your science is not literature. A scientific paper, the goal of peer reviewing is to see if it's true or not.
Yes, but somebody is going to write a thesis.
If the first half is correct and it works,
and the second half is not, because the
second half is not correct and it doesn't work, then you just discard the second half because it's wrong, right? But it's not how that works in literature.
It's not the second half. But I'm saying the second half, which is nonsense, does not override the other one.
But in literature, the nonsense is all true.
There is only one true thing that can be correct at a time.
False.
No.
Nope.
Yeah,
peanut butter and jelly can taste really good, and ice cream can taste really good, and those are two different things.
But they're
both true at the same
time.
Yeah,
okay. But it's not the case that I can have the mass of the sun be 1 solar mass, and then also simultaneously be 2 solar masses.
Yes. In literature, you can't have good world building where things are consistent, and then have a second one where the world building is not consistent and it's all over the place.
But
and it retcons on top of that the old stuff.
If you have 2 books in the same world made by the same author, and the second one contradicts the first one, you don't know which one is the correct one, because that is a decision by the author, not by you. It's not
But
chronologically
both
based.
are by the author. So
Yeah.
which is the right decision?
The right
The-
decision
is the
is
retcon.
that both are canon, but it is inconsistent, so it's bad world building.
Or the author retcons
And
his
bad
previous work.
storytelling and
bad,
just
yeah,
trash
sure,
and
it's
normal.
it's trash
So,
essentially.
for
But
example,
both are still canon.
if J.K. Rowling writes the first Harry Potter book and Hermione's white, and the second book she's black, which one's canon? Is she white or is she black?
Both.
She can't be both. It's logically
is both.
impossible to be both at the same time. You can't be both.
The
But
retcon of her
see,
being black is
this
the
is
one
the
that's
quantum superposition analogy, right? She is both black and white simultaneously because only
That's
the
Schrodinger's
author's
cat, dude.
intent
That's not the same
matters.
thing.
Schrodinger's Hermione. Schrodinger's Hermione.
Schrodinger's Hermione. That's what that is.
Yeah.
It's not. You cannot both be alive and dead simultaneously.
Well, you
Yes.
can.
Not in reality,
You can be medically like
but it
the
can be
person's
the case.
dead,
Well, actually,
but they came
this
back
is
to life because their
aside
heart just
from-
beat again.
See, this is not simultaneously because it's once you don't know which of the two it is, but it could be both.
Well,
So-
logically, it'd be the first one
Why?
because it came first.
Why is
Well,
that
if you're logically, because
you're
sequential
not allowed
pattern
to
starts
revise
one.
things ever?
That depends on the revision and how it's done.
Okay.
Logically,
That's your
it's always-
opinion.
No.
That's your
When you have 1 + 1 = 2, the 1 at the beginning is the
What
beginning
if
of the
what if
equation.
the author just said, "Yeah, sorry, I made a mistake. I accidentally wrote white, but it should be black over there. Sorry, she's actually black. Done."
Well,
The second
again,
one is correct.
You're a bad author because you should have noticed this
Yeah,
way before
sure,
time.
you're a bad author, but that does not affect the what is the degree of canon for the different sources.
Again,
But
you're-
how
you're
would the
confusing-
author explain that the second one is correct and the first one is incorrect?
By saying the first one is incorrect.
They don't have to explain it.
They just have to say this
I
is
feel
the
like
true
canon
version.
has to be explained for
No, it
itself,
doesn't.
and the
No.
writing itself is the explanation until
Yeah, and
there's
there's in the
inconsistency.
writing it says she's black. In this hypothetical second book.
Yeah.
Of course, in the actual Harry Potter, nowhere ever is it mentioned.
Well, in her tweets it is. So
Yeah, but that's not in the book, is it?
but it's the author, so you're just gonna have to suck
It's
it
the
up. sir.
author, but it's not in a written.
Authorial authority, I guess, whatever you call it. Matt calls it something. I don't remember what it's called. But when the author has any say, like Robert Jordan with the Flickr, the Flickr issue with the insects, he says in one half it's Pedon Fane, in the other half he says it's Lanfear. He contradicts himself in both, even though it's outside of the books in both conversations. It's just like a fan expo kind of a thing.
Right.
Neither of those characters has either the ability nor the
How do you know?
motive to do it, because I've broken down every possible situation in which both of those characters would do things, and the way
Okay.
they behave in the same exact book is completely contradictory, and they don't have the actual ability to do
But that
so.
is not okay. Wait. Right there, you're making a mistake. Okay,
No,
because you did the breakdown of why their psychological motivations, basically, is what. Okay, that's
they also
you
don't have the
forming-
physical capability to do it either.
But again, that's you forming a thesis as to that. He could literally, with his own product, say, "This is how it is. I don't care what logic says."
Also, why is Lanfear not able to do that?
Because she left.
So
That same trap was respawned and started again.
Okay, so it looks like I think I can solve this, right? So there's two different types of debate you can have about a product, right? You can debate whether
I'm sure
you
there's
can-
more than two.
Well, no, there's only two of everything, but there's a lot of sets of twos. Think of it that way, okay?
There's more than two.
No, there's more than everything exists in opposition to something else.
There's
right?
yes, no, and there's also maybe. There's always at least
But
one.
maybe exists in opposition to yes or no, not to yes and no, not yes or no.
I believe it opposes all of them.
It opposes both simultaneously.
While they
It's,
both
it's
simultaneously
yes or
oppose each other.
no, or yes, no, maybe.
Yes, no, maybe no. I raise
No.
you one.
That's yes, no, maybe no. That not maybe.
But maybe no is just maybe.
Well, it's only maybe no and yes maybe if you add maybe to each of those. It doesn't have to. It can stand by itself.
Everything that exists is defined in opposition to something else.
Or opposition to multiple things, which is
No.
usually the
Yeah.
case.
I mean, I guess that could be.
I mean, those things I've experienced in life have more than just two sides.
There are more than two sides, but every single one of those is singularly opposite. So so if it's like if something is true, its inverse must be also be true, but its converse must be false. Am I remembering it right, Sage?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So if something is logical, there's an inverse and a converse, right? So if something is true, its inverse must also be true, like an inverse function, right?
Yeah, I guess.
But
so.
its converse must
It'd
be
like
false.
binary.
So like you said it before, solar masses, right? The sun can only have one.
It can have only one specific defined value. That is true.
So the converse of
You can
that
pretend
would be it could have
is a
multiple.
different one, but it's
Can
not.
the sun have multiple defined solar masses? No. Therefore, it must have one solar mass. Yes. So
Are you saying that something is either true or it isn't, and the isn't could be multiples? Is that what you're saying?
The isn't could have a category of multiples, but the category is false.
Yes, but I'm saying there's more than
It's
one
one
false,
whole.
which is more than two.
No.
It's a set, right?
It's true or false, but
It's a set theory.
Yeah.
Reality,
Something is either in
I
the
get that.
true set or in the wrong set.
Yeah.
Unless you don't have all knowledge, then it is not necessarily.
No, it's still in either of those. You just don't know which.
Well, but if all of the things you're bringing forth are neither true nor false because you are missing a component, they can't be in the true factories.
They are true or false. You just don't know.
Which means you don't have those options. That's my point. They do exist, but not to you.
Okay. Is the square root of 2 irrational?
I mean, personally, I find all arithmetic irrational. I hate arithmetic so much.
Well, the answer is yes. It's provably irrational. However, if I said to you, what is
unless
what is the 174 quadrillionth digit? Have they even calculated that far yet? I don't think so.
I don't know if there's enough time in the world plus computer processing power.
No, they actually have computers running to continuously calculate how far they can get. There's actually a whole video on that.
Yeah, why though is a different question.
Just wait until that computer crashes and they lose all their information.
they basically run until the memory is full and then see what you get. But anyway,
limitation.
That's why they have tetration and
big numbers. Yes, we get it. Big numbers.
So the point I'm getting is, but you can prove it's irrational without doing that, right? So you don't need to know all the digits to prove it's rational.
What I'm saying is that it doesn't have to be put on Fane and it doesn't have to be Lanfear. Those aren't the only options.
Sure.
I agree.
People have argued it's a bubble of evil. Well, it doesn't fit the narrative of a bubble of evil. A bubble of evil doesn't just randomly pop up somewhere and just stay there. It always
it does randomly pop up somewhere. That's the whole thing about
it. Pops up around specific people.
No.
Yes,
it can pop up everywhere.
It pops up on a certain path.
It is more likely to happen near interference.
But when one ends, it does not come back.
Sure.
Okay. I personally,
if it was a bubble of evil and Rand leaves, Varen, who shows up later, would not have experienced it.
Okay.
She does experience it. So it's not a bubble of evil.
I just wanted a little besides the point, right? I personally may agree with your position that it could be other people besides those two, right? But Jordan has the absolute right as long as you're not product to say it's one of those two.
He's not saying it's one of those two. He's saying it's both of them.
Well, whatever he's saying,
it logically doesn't make sense for either of them.
The logic doesn't matter because he says it is. He doesn't have to be logical.
How is it not logical? Sorry, which one does he say first?
He said put on Fane.
That's
doesn't
first.
Make any sense? Yes.
Then he said later it's
Lanfear, which doesn't make sense.
Why not?
Why does it make sense? Well, because
why does it not make sense?
Well, she's not trying to kill him.
Okay,
That's one motivation.
sure.
Second motivation is she already has a test that she's going to plan for him because she knows of the Portal Stone's existence. And that's how she's trying to force him to get used to it and to prove that he is who she thinks he is. And to make him attracted to her so that he'll basically be back in love again.
So I don't think the Portal Stone test, let's call it, was planned.
What do you mean it wasn't planned?
Because it relies on the fact that Rand randomly sleeps next to a portal stone and gets teleported into a world with crazy prawns.
It wouldn't necessarily mean that she planned for that event to happen, but that she was motivated by that encounter, as well as other times where she comes back to him as Celine,
Sure,
trying to motivate him a specific way.
Mhm.
But she's not going to act hastily, throw him into a trap that could potentially kill him and lose him, as opposed
Sure.
to something where she can force him to use his powers and force him to attain glory. And
But maybe
be a
that
glory
trap
hunter.
wasn't for Rand.
It was only specifically for channelers.
Okay, maybe
It doesn't
that's
affect
true.
anybody who's not a channeler.
So
But the
maybe
only
it was
channeler-
targeting Aes Sedai.
Maybe
There
logically
was no
that's
Aes Sedai
true.
there yet.
Not
Baron
yet.
was
Maybe
a while
may-
behind him.
maybe
There's no-
logically that's
There's
true.
no way for Lanfear to know that Baron was even coming down the road.
But you're missing
Sure.
the point. Jordan doesn't have to be logical.
No, I think he does.
No, he doesn't.
Authorship has to have a logical consistency, otherwise it's
No,
chaos.
it doesn't.
Yeah.
Have
That's
you ever
the
read
way-
poetry?
Yeah, if it's not logically consistent, that's chaos, sure, but that could also be allowed, maybe.
Well, we know he was in book 2 to book 3. It was kind of wishy-washy in the direction he was going. I
Yeah.
can grant that, but what I can't grant is that just because he says it's put on Fane, it is put on Fane, because then there's no logical cohesiveness. Same thing for Lanfear. Same thing for Bubble of Evil. I think it's a fourth option, and that's it. He wasn't sure where he was going with that.
Mhm.
But I believe that the pattern did that to test Rand more than I would believe the other three. Because
Why
that
would it
logically
repeat
stay
that
consistent.
for Varian?
Again, don't know.
It doesn't make
This goes
logical
back to what I was
sense.
saying
This,
before.
Doesn't, but it makes
there
better
were-
sense than the other options.
there were
I don't
two-
think so.
This is what I was saying before, right? We're
Well, why
talking
wouldn't it?
about
The
now.
pattern could
We're
be-
It's
saying-
probably more likely that it's a double bubble of evil than the pattern just testing
No
Rand.
Bubble of Evil has ever been a double in the
So
entire series. And why would it reset in the
the
exact same
pattern
spot for
doesn't
days later?
randomly test someone and then accidentally use the same test on some unrelated person.
They
So
could use the same type, but it wouldn't necessarily. Like the thing is, we don't know because we've never seen a double ever explained elsewhere. Doesn't mean it doesn't have the capability, but that's a beyond extra. That's we don't know enough information. But again, I think this was something. where
Also,
he
what
was
is it
planning on going through it.
testing exactly?
Why was it? What is it testing?
What is the purpose of the pattern itself?
The
Trying to put
it's
that as a
utilizing the Taviran nature
To
to
do what?
cause him to learn his because he has to channel to get out of the effect.
Okay.
So it's basically testing him to use the ability. It's same way where he uses it with a lightning hole flash thing where Matt goes blind in the first book. And he had to use this when he
Yeah, but
didn't know
that's-
what he was doing.
That's not the pattern setting up an elaborate trap for him.
Well, it could be the pattern using the trap to do that.
Yeah, but the pattern works in putting people in specific places so that events happen in a certain way.
Well, it
It
also
doesn't
has
magically
it
create
follows-
a
it follows
magical
need.
effect.
if he needs something. So if he needs to become more conducive to his channeling abilities, it's not a far throw of an idea concept that it tries to pull him into a situation to which he needs to
Yeah,
channel
but that
to become better with
situation
it.
is created through other people.
Well, it was created through following Padan Fane, and the pattern's like, hey, this is going to happen after this situation. and
Yeah,
you
but
need to be better at this
someone
situation.
must have set it up. The pattern doesn't magically put weaves or whatever it was causing that somewhere.
I've not studied that detail of it enough to know. And again, I'm
All
not
the
saying
effects of the pattern on making the continuity go as it wants, let's call it, is by making people do things in certain places. Nothing ever occurs solely because of the pattern.
the pattern is not the force.
Well, that's because the pattern's not incoherent.
Well,
Every single action, let's call it, every event that happens has its cause ultimately in a decision someone made.
But does it have to be a decision that directly interacts?
Yes.
I feel like there's somewhere where it wasn't, but
Name one.
I'm not going to flip through 15 books in 5 seconds to tell you the answer for that. But
I'm saying you can't find one.
Feelings.
I'm saying out of the 4 options, the pattern, which is a lot more, it's not just cut and dry. There's other options that are not used or could be used that just weren't used.
I think
that
it's
has
not
more options
because that never happens ever in the book.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing with Eru Iluvatar interacting with things. Why would he do that when he could just let things play out a specific way?
Yeah, sure. But that's a different universe.
It's a similar concept. Now, one could argue it's the creator who did it. I don't freaking know. I don't know.
The creator, sure, but not the pattern.
Well, guess who created the pattern?
Well, okay, that's a whole other subject, though. Like, does Jordan ever provide an example of the creator directly interceding, or does he just set the pattern in motion because it's perfect?
Well, it depends if you're going off for Sanderson and whether he's following the notes that says it, yes, or if just the creator does it. Apparently, the creator does at least 2 times in the book series, according to somebody else's notes.
Okay.
I don't remember every single one of them, so I can't make the claim. But somebody else claims that there are a couple times the creator does interact.
The only case we have in that I'm aware of, at least, of the creator interfering is in book 1, where he talks to Rand. Everything else is Sanderson.
I mean, there's also the lighting the pipe and everything, but
yeah, but that's Sanderson.
Yeah. Well, I know, but I'm saying I don't know if that was originally
Jordan's
notes
we can't have a
that
note.
he puts in. Well, I mean, we can.
We can if we ask Sanderson, I guess.
Harriet. Well, or Harriet, but yeah. Point being is that it can't be Landfair, it can't be put on Fane, and it can't be a Bubble of Evil. Because Bubble of Evils aren't permanent, and they don't, like, their effects can be permanent. Like, if they kill you, you're dead. Like, that's permanent.
Wow.
But they don't persist indefinitely in the same location. And Varen was a day behind.
Sure.
So when the Bubble of Evil would eventually have gone away,
Mhm.
and then Varen would have run through, why would she get caught in the same thing when it's not there?
Don't know.
Exactly. So those 3 don't make logical sense. And every explanation for somebody saying something happened. I believe personally that he was taking the story a particular direction and then changed the direction and just forgot that he wrote that part. That's my belief, personally, which is a feasible, reasonable way to go about it. But if you're going to put something, like put pen to paper and say, this is how it happened, I would say it was the pattern. The pattern caused something or someone to cause that thing to happen because he needed something. Now, it would make more sense that he needs to prep himself for the portal stone, because he has to be able to channel through it in order to do it. And if the more he channels, the more he becomes, like, even Landfair says this, the more he works on channel powers, the more he becomes familiar with it.
It
that
could be
more logical
in that
sense
way set up by the pattern, but the pattern still acts through people. And so it had to be someone actually doing it.
But there could be another thing, like the pattern had a random Aes wandering around, set a trap thinking they were doing it for something else.
Yeah,
and then wander off, and then
that's possible.
I don't know. But the thing is that if it was a person, why would they reset it?
Maybe they have an automatic reset weave in there.
That's not something that's shown in the series. That's a possibility. Even the Forsaken don't have those kind of powers that we are aware of.
Well, the
and
answer is because that's the way Jordan wrote it.
But that's the same problem with, like, the Acolyte, where flames in space with the wind flickering it when there's no wind in space.
Oh, yeah, that's.
Well, no,
that's
there could have been pressure from a chemical that burns without oxygen or contains oxygen. There's a lot of logical reasons why you have flames.
It wouldn't flicker, though. It would just be different heights.
It depends on how the pressure is flowing.
Yeah, and also maybe if there's like someone, I don't know, just putting.
What if the gas are escaping from not one hole but 17 different little holes at all angles, and their combustion one has oxygen, so allows it to
combust. Yeah, that's technically, but it's a bit.
There are a lot of logical reasons why you could see.
That's a lot of far-fetched logical reasons that the show does not cover at all. And that's
Yes.
that would be you reaching as opposed to knowing how it works.
And listen, whenever I say people want to criticize the Acolyte and they bring it up, I say that's number 18,402 on the list of reading.
Yeah,
It's very low, yeah.
I'm not saying that that's the main issue with the
I mean,
Acolyte. I'm saying that
You
kind
know,
of logical
explosions in
inconsistency.
space is not technically correct, but it does make the thing a bit better.
It looks cooler and whatever. You don't have sounds in space. That's a sense thing for people who are viewing.
Okay,
it.
let
I
me
get
put
that.
it this way, right?
But that's a suspension of disbelief that makes sense, as opposed
If-
to like a literal
if in
burning
Star Wars, I
campfire
don't know.
like on a planet.
Well, what is the best what is the most accurate science fiction movie? Like what people want to cite? Like I don't know, Interstellar, right? That's the one.
I never watched it, so I wouldn't know.
You know.
Well, it's correct, but in the first half, I guess.
Okay, so let's say in the first half of Interstellar, which was to me the first half is great.
I mean, the whole time dilation and that stuff, that's all correct.
Yeah.
The
so
visuals
let's say in
look
that first
mostly
half,
okay,
which was
but
very correct and was a good movie,
Yeah.
right? All you saw one
the
little fire
ending
burning in space,
completely
right?
ruins it.
No one would care because the first half was really good. They'll fire in space, whatever. He made
I
a
wouldn't say
mistake.
nobody would care. I think they would just put it very low on their priorities of over entertainment value. I
Yeah.
just don't think people found.
Or you would do what I
entertainment
say.
value
Well,
out of it.
there could be a logical, if extreme explanation for why that little fire
Well,
burnt in space.
For example, what is the value of the Acolyte where OSHA is, or Asha, whatever her freaking name is,
It
looks at
sounds
the
like
fire
the,
and it's
government
burning?
organization, OSHA.
Yeah, OSHA. So she sees this fire. The only value it has is remembering that there was a fire when she was a kid. When her
But
sister
open
turned
fires
stone
are
on fire.
OSHA violations, aren't they?
But
Yes.
you could do that scene.
That's actually truer
inside
than
the
you think, Sage. I know you're making a pun, but it's truer than you think.
Well, yes, I'm pretty sure if stone catches on fire, that's an OSHA violation.
Yeah,
but
that makes sense.
my point is that the scene itself is illogical because you could have had that on the inside, like something on the inside of the ship bursts into flame, and she has that flashback because of it. That would make more sense than doing it outside. So it's an illogical.
So wait, what is the
entirely.
scene exactly? Because I haven't seen this. I'm not going
So
to.
there's a scene
ruin
where
my
she
eyes,
goes,
right?
she's like a
Hold on.
mechanic or a mechanic or whatever they call them,
Yeah.
and
A
she goes on the
mechanic?
outside. Yeah, it's mechanic.
It's a Star Wars word for
Okay.
mechanic.
Okay.
So she goes out into space in her little
Mm-hmm.
astronaut space outfit
Okay. Yeah.
to fix this problem. And on the outside of the ship is a campfire coming out of the ship, and it just like literally looks a slow campfire you could roast your marshmallows over.
Okay.
It literally is flickering like the
But
wind
again,
hitting it.
Yeah.
in
Okay.
space.
But that could just be
And
bad
people
visual
harp on
effects.
that as if that's the
No.
major problem wrong with
There's
the
another
show.
scene later on with a fire doing the exact same thing, but on a planet. And it's like, again, this scene inside
Yeah.
of the ship would make perfect logical sense and would.
No, but
bring
I think that's less of an issue of they intentionally don't understand how space fires work. Let's call it, and more they were lazy and
What
just
space fires? That's the problem.
No, fire. You can have fire in space. It's just
For a
not.
millisecond.
No.
No, it depends on the fuel source.
But
You
yes,
can have a
It's
sustained
not that
source of gas, and if you, it's
I mean,
basically
there's a really big one in the sky right now.
yeah. Well, I mean that's not a great example, but
I mean, the sun is burning and it's in space, right?
all right. Let's
sure.
let's
No,
bring this
but
back in, since we're
if
already
you
way
have,
off the-
say, a one of them, I don't know what they're called in English, but a source of a gas burner, I guess,
gaseous burn,
maybe, yeah, I
Bunsen
don't know.
burner.
a fireball.
Essentially, if you have a constant stream of gas that can burn,
If you have a
put
constant
fire
source,
next to it,
then
then you can have fire in space. It doesn't really look like fire in real Earth environments, of course.
well, again, I'm not
But it's
necessarily
kind of
solely-
difficult to
I'm not-
make it look
I'm not
normal
solo
when you're
like,
filming on Earth.
I'm not building the argument on whether it is or isn't in space. My point is that the whole scene itself is illogical because they could have done that on the inside of the ship and had the exact same effect, but actually made sense.
We get that tons of that.
No,
which-
I think that's
Which
a
which
minor-
happens consistently throughout the entire Acolyte season. But
Yeah.
my point is that the logic of it and who the author did or whatever they did does not necessarily mean it's canon in terms of its own story because it contradicts
It
itself
is.
multiple times.
It is. It's canon because that's their story.
Yeah.
I'm saying if it retcons itself in the exact same story in which it tells itself, it's destroying itself, and thus is a reverse negative.
Well, you could argue that then the latest source is canon.
Yeah, that's what the word retcon means.
So the part that makes sense comes first, and the part that comes afterwards doesn't make sense. Then that part overrides the first part that does make sense.
No.
So then nothing can exist and nothing can happen.
It
Because
only
makes sense.
doesn't make sense if you use the original, now outdated setting.
If the retcon changes something,
In general, right? I'm not sure if we're talking a specific example
okay,
here. Or...
If you have, I would pick an object, and that object can like absorb everything, and everything ceases to exist.
Okay,
and
that's
that
a
object
bit of an
is
extreme object, but sure.
Black hole might as well be a black hole.
But
But
it doesn't absorb
I didn't
everything.
say observe. Well, I'm just saying, if you were to use like an anime black hole, is that better? So you have this normal story, blah 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 blah, and then you have this like they're like, we're gonna make a season 2, and then boom, that begins with this anime black hole that absorbs everything, and everything ceases to exist because of it. It's a giant balefire black hole.
Sure,
and
yeah.
Everything gets sucked into this, and then they have story afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't logically make sense because everything was sucked into it. Therefore, it doesn't exist, and nothing after it exists. Thus, you can't have any more story.
Or
more story.
But you're again, that's called the internal consistency of the story, right? That's not real world logic. You're using real world logic. An author who writes a story or TV show, whatever.
Also, this is a super extreme example.
Does not have to,
because you basically
have you seen people's writings these days? It's pretty extreme.
If you create a product, whether it's a movie, a TV show, a book, or whatever, you do not have to make the product logically consistent to be enjoyable.
If you have Superman who's is weak to kryptonite or whatever.
Yeah, that's allergic. That's the same thing.
Okay, well, not necessarily. Reactions are very different.
Well, it actually depends.
He has an allergic reaction to kryptonite.
It depends on the continuity.
Let's assume
which continuity
he has an allergy or a weakness to kryptonite.
Mm-hmm.
But then they're like, he doesn't have it, and he just all of a sudden magically does not have this allergy.
Okay, yeah.
That can destroy the story in terms of I have Lex Luthor with a bunch of kryptonite who's going to use the kryptonite, but all of a sudden it doesn't work, even though from all of the other setups and the settings and everything else,
maybe
it should by all.
So here you go. This is a good example, right?
There's no bad
Pre-crisis Superman was always weak to kryptonite, and there's nothing he can do about it. Post-crisis Superman could absorb enough solar radiation that the kryptonite cannot penetrate his body. That was a retcon to basically when they reestablished post-crisis Superman, who absorbs and stores solar radiation rather than pre-crisis who only gets it and doesn't store it. So there you go.
Right, but even
canon because they're not the same thing. They can't both be true because they're both different directions.
No, but see, in these types of things, the latest source is like
they can't both be true. You can't both be allergic and not allergic simultaneously.
No.
Only
but
one
he
of the
is
paths
allergic
can make
and
sense.
still.
They're two different characters.
Just has. Oh, they're different characters. Oh, okay. In that case, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, pre-crisis. I said pre-crisis Superman. I literally said pre-crisis Superman.
Yeah, does he become is that not Clark Kent then, or?
Well, what happened is this, okay? DC
if it's a totally different Superman with a different abilities, not Clark Kent, then that makes sense.
The original Superman is called. The original Superman, Kal-El, couldn't fly or anything, right? So then a couple years later, they gave him more power. So that was called Golden Age Superman. And then, but there was inconsistencies in the story there, right? So then about 20 years later, they gave him even more powers, and he was Silver Age Superman. But then they came up with a way to explain it by saying that Kal-El, Golden Age Superman, exists on Earth too, and so forth. So they explained multiple continuities. They retconned it in, right?
Yeah, eventually they used the multiverse.
The story got so complicated.
I hate multiverse so freaking much.
The story got so complicated, and pre-crisis Superman became so ridiculously powerful with 7,000 superpowers. They said, we're going to reset all continuity with Crisis on Infinite Earths and reestablish one singular universe. That was post-crisis Superman. Well, then they eventually retconned that there really was a multiverse that got reestablished, but we only could see one world.
So then what's the whole point of making it a single one?
Again, the point was so they can just make more money. That was the point of it. But,
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I get that, but from a story perspective, what's the point in having multiples? Because none of them will make any sense, and none of them have any value.
Which allow in a multiversal comic sense, right? It allowed you to tell a story of like Superman if he landed in Russia, for example, or Superman if he
Alternative theories, sure, but you don't need a story for that. You could just theorize if he had landed in
No, but
Russia.
You could have also just
have
have the.
But again, you want to make
stories.
money on it, so you want to write a comic book based on it.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the money aspect. I'm talking story aspect.
Yeah, you just have two separate stories, and they both happen to be.
And if you want to read that, you go to
this is
fanfiction.net.
an alien that lands in America, and this is about an alien that lands in Russia. They happen to be very similar.
You could do that with
the different stories
without being Superman directly. It could be literally not Kal-El. It could be literally any other introductory, and they have a similar power.
But you could do that.
You could do that, but you could also not do that.
I know this isn't about product. I don't care about product.
We're not talking about what you would do with your product. We're talking what DC did with their product.
I know what the history of people do, because bad decisions exist all the time. I'm saying that if you have some story, like for example, you can't have Kal-El in Kansas, Truth, Justice, the American Way, at the exact same time as Kal-El in Russia, Better Red Than Dead, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And that's why you have a multiverse.
There's a well-received story for that.
I'm aware, but then they're not the same canon entirely. They're not even the same.
No, it is.
Well, they are the same canon if you specifically have the multiverse.
Totally different things. I know, but if you have a multiverse, that's a different canon.
No, it's
no, because they both exist in the same canon because they're separate universes in the same universe.
If you're in a different universe, you're not in the same canon.
No, you
because
are.
None of the effects of the other multiverses are going to affect your line.
Because they can travel between.
They travel between and visit each other.
Well, let's throw in
so it's the same canon.
And there are villains like Darkseid.
I mean, it's not a great storytelling tool, but it's
for one, that is not even close to a great storytelling tool. That's a horrible storytelling tool.
Well, again, you may not like
legal.
it.
That's
these Superman stories, Elseworld Superman have done phenomenally well.
All right, well, let's bring this back in since we have not yet even talked about the thing we want to talk about.
So what were we going to talk about? Even?
So my question...
I vaguely heard Jedi and Force, and that's...
Well, relation to the Force. So
we did talk about that, but not without Star Wars.
Yes. Well, no, we talked about just the Force. We didn't talk about the rules sets. So,
what's the rule sets?
So for each of you, I want you to
establish the rule sets.
That's what you have to do. So first...
I don't know the rule set.
You should, if you know anything about Star Wars. So, starting with Sage, give like a 30-second rendition of what you think the Jedi can and cannot do when it comes to attacking, killing, defending, any rules of emotions, passions, etc. Like what what they preach in the actual series versus what the Force would actually require them to do.
Okay, so the Force is essentially telekinesis. That's it. Done. No, they can also do like see stuff with it, I guess, maybe.
The Force is everything, everywhere, all at once.
Yeah, but like we're talking about what the Jedi can do with it.
Actually, we have to have a qualifier.
No, not just what they can do with it.
We need a qualifier on that. When you say Jedi, do you mean someone who is not just a light side Force user, but an actual member of the Jedi Order?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because what the order claims, what the order claims how they have to function in order for them to use the Force versus what the Force actually gives a crap about. Make sense?
Yeah,
I don't know what the Force gives a crap about.
So I'm saying, like, when they say, you can't get married because, your passions will be going wild and thus you'll be tempted by the dark side, and that's what they believe, but whether or not that's actually true is not necessarily true. That makes sense.
Well, let me go first, and I think he'll get it.
Okay.
Yeah, so to be a Jedi properly, you must submit yourself to the will of the Force and learn to interpret the universal and living Force so that you understand what the Force is telling you, the will of the Force is telling you to do. Within that context, you can do anything it tells you to do, so long as you're using the light side of the Force, which is all it's telling you to do.
But what can you do versus
Whatever
not?
whatever it tells you, whatever the will of the Force guides you to do, whatever.
But if the will of the Force tells you can get married and indulge your passions with your wife, but the Jedi Order says you can't, that's what we're talking
The
about.
Force is correct, not the Jedi.
Yes, but the Jedi don't see it that way. That's
Who
the
cares?
problem.
Is that a
No,
problem?
no.
People
the
can
whole,
be wrong,
the whole-
right? They're allowed to be wrong.
Yeah, they're allowed to be wrong.
Well, not necessarily not allowed to be wrong.
Well, let me put it this way. I'll make it real easy.
My purpose is the purpose of this is to see the Jedi Order has a structure. They have rules, they have regulations, whatever you want to call them, laws, whatever. Because they believe the only way you can function and connect with the Force is if you follow these guidelines. But we also know that there's other Force users out in the galaxy somewhere else. They're not all just Sith or all just Jedi. There's even gray Jedi, but just other people who use the Force, interact with the Force or whatever, but are not affiliated with the group. These people have a connection with the Force, but don't necessarily have the limitations that the Jedi have. So what the Jedi say you have to have versus what you can actually do. Does this line up with how Anakin behaved? Because if he has his passion,
you're ignoring something completely.
Padme.
You're ignoring something completely. The Force is sapient.
Okay.
It has an active, conscious will.
I'll take your word for it. I didn't see that in the movies, but
it's not.
George says in interviews, and it's in the books in the EU. So
we call it bad world building, but good storytelling.
Again, then don't pay attention to Star Wars. There's even Lord of the Rings, the greatest.
I like something. Well, don't pay attention to it if you have complaints. Well, no, I just want them to.
The Lord of the Rings is the greatest literary setting, most complete and awesome literature in the world. It has its flaws. Okay, and so if you're gonna nitpick and complain.
Wait, that's heresy.
That's literal blasphemy, good sir. We have to burn you at the stake.
Yeah, let me put it this way: if you want to do a constructive literary critique, I'm cool with that, right? But if you want,
that's what I'm doing though about Star Wars.
No, but you're not doing that. What you're saying, you're asking the question is within the context of the rules that George set up, what could the Jedi do? That's what you're saying.
No,
there's no analysis there at all.
Remember the last conversation we had was about the Force. And I was understanding that it was an incoherent mess because nothing about it was coherent. No, because I was saying one thing contradicts another, which is incoherent with another, which goes against the other.
Well, there's no contradiction. You do what the Force tells you to do if you're a Jedi. That's it. There's nothing else.
But we also know from the movies that there is the Force tells you what to do. It's
telling them all the time. They just don't know how to interpret it, or they're confused about it.
Sage, when you watched the movies, did you ever get any idea that the sapient Force existed and was telling people what to do, or were they just using it as a magical function?
It seems from just the movies that it seems like just magic power.
Yes, there's no
with maybe a slight
again. So the Force created Anakin to bring balance to the Force. It didn't create him to save the Jedi. It didn't create him to save all the people.
I'm not saying that's the purpose. I'm saying that the Force had a function, and that's how we were trying to narrow it down in the first part of this.
Sure. Yes.
And now we're looking at that function, and we're saying when the Jedi make a claim, or when Star Wars as a book, not necessarily exclusively the Jedi, when the author of it states that this has to happen in order for this to happen, is that how the Force actually functions, or are they making a claim that is not necessary? And then if it's not necessary, could the story have been done otherwise? Like, if the Force
you're doing literary analysis again. You're not
I'm analyzing what is given to me and then taking it and saying here's possibilities.
But that's not the question you asked. The question you asked is solely within the context of George Lucas's canon, right? If the Jedi, is there any limit to what the Jedi can do at all? Basically, that's your basic question.
No. Not limit at all.
Yes, there is a limit. You can't resurrect people.
You can't make them fall in love. Well, come on, Genie. What's the third one?
Yeah, sure. Healing is not possible. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe.
Well, no, Force healing does exist. Remember?
Yeah. No, that's not canon.
Actually,
force
I
force healing does
you might
exist
have
in
some, but I don't think
force
it's
healing
in
does
every
exist
situation.
in Lucas's canon.
Does
It's a
it?
light side power though.
It's not an everybody can use it. I don't think
It's very rare.
It's
And
very
you have
specific.
to be a very strong light side user to do it. And
You basically have to be a naive Jedi.
and you need to be
Yeah.
very strong with the living force.
Okay.
Which not many of those around.
I didn't
But
see any healing in the movies.
my
but,
point is like,
Well, in the
if-
movies, you
if-
only saw Jedi with the universal force, not the living force,
okay.
Qui-Gon-
except
besides
for Qui-Gon and Luke.
But
yeah.
Qui-Gon doesn't
So-
heal himself when he gets cut up, so it's.
But he's not a healer though. He's a combat.
okay. Fair enough.
he's not a support. He's a DPS. Get over it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but like,
And also not a tank, which explains why he got.
so what
immediately.
I'm trying to say is like,
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
look over the Jedi Code, we're saying is like there's not this,
Yeah,
only this.
you must
Is the
not
Force actually restricted
do any
to that?
emotions. Or
And
stuff.
if not, could somebody have done otherwise? I believe Luke diverts from this, and when he recreates the Jedi, doesn't follow those strictness rules because
Yeah.
he realizes and recognizes they don't
He
follow that.
doesn't actually know them. He doesn't
Well, I mean,
find
Jedi
out the
texts were
Jedi Code
burned in
until
front of
well
him
after
by
he started
Yoda,
with the
so-
Jedi Order. No, Yoda never taught him that. Yoda.
Well, I'm
Yoda,
sure he's aware that the code existed. He may not be aware of that
Yoda-
code.
What Yoda taught Luke was after what happens is after
I
Yoda.
meant the Disney one where he burns them with lightning in the little hollow of the tree.
I'm just ignoring.
The sacred text. I know it's just a joke. It was a joke.
When Yoda flees, he meets
No.
Qui-Gon's Force Ghost, who teaches him Qui-Gon's way of the Force. Okay, and that's what he.
Yoda, if you did this right the first time.
Well, that's what. Qui-Gon was the first Force Ghost. He learned to be immortal in the Force, and he balanced the living in you. Blah blah blah. Right? Okay. He taught that to Yoda. Right. So Yoda taught that to Luke.
Yoda also shows up as ghosts. Yes.
Yeah, Yoda taught that to Luke, and so Luke
Anakin.
recreated the Jedi Order
Yeah.
initially based on the living Force, and eventually kind of figures out the universal Force, and that's when he becomes Grandmaster Luke, full power.
Actually, there's a good possible contradiction. How did Anakin learn the living force?
He didn't,
So how is he a force ghost?
because he came from the Force.
Oh yeah, no, that does make sense.
But
Actually,
he came from the force doesn't mean he is trained in the living force.
no, he's
It
a
doesn't matter what
force,
he's trained.
Forceborn, right?
Anakin existed.
So could he
Anakin,
not show up to Luke later and train Luke?
No, but he's still alive.
in
at that point.
in the EU,
Yoda, who's alive, talked to Qui-Gon, who's not alive,
in
and
the
they had a
EU,
meeting.
because Qui-Gon is dead.
And so is Anakin when he's a force ghost. That's
so
my
what
point.
happens is
Yeah,
this,
but then the film is over, and then
when Anakin brings balance
EU,
to the
good sir,
Force,
EU.
right? When Anakin brings balance to the Force, there is no longer an extreme need for Force ghosts to come back. They do occasionally appear in the EU over the next 30, 40 years.
so what
very
do
rare.
Force ghosts actually do?
Why do they
Yes.
need to exist? Could they not exist solely on their own because they are one with the force?
Well, George never discusses the afterlife of Star Wars. It's very loosely considered to be that there's something after this life that's next, but it's not. In other words, what Qui-Gon, Yoda, and
The sapient force is very much like the pattern, is all I'm getting from this.
like the
Yeah,
Force is
that
part of
makes
the
sense.
universe.
Less consistent.
Well, no, the Force is part of the universe, right? So the afterlife is not part of
Yeah.
the universe, like in Christianity. It's
Yeah, but like
Essentially, you could
Qui-Gon-
see it sort of as the
Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan,
dark energy or something.
Yoda, and Anakin being force ghosts is like the heroes of the Horn. That's really all they are. But
that's an
there's-
analogy. That's a valid analogy, except for Anakin.
But-
Anakin, and for the three, not Anakin.
Again. But my
No,
point
but
is
Anakin
that,
came from the Force. That's why he can manifest. Lucas said that outright.
well, yeah, he's Jane Farstrider for the Heroes of the Horn. He kind of just joined up later on. But my point is that the Heroes of the Horn don't have a need per se. It's just you find the horn, you blow the horn, you get the Heroes of the Horn.
Well, okay.
But the characters are also strung back into the pattern, into life at random opportunity points and stuff. In Star Wars, why does there have to be a need for them to come back?
Because Lucas said so.
Maybe because they're ghosts, and so they can't really do anything much. So they just figure.
Well, they have to fulfill
point to
certain
going back.
No, they could
requirements
act.
in order.
They could
They-
act.
they have
but
to-
when Obi-Wan says, "I will become much more powerful," he literally, as a Force ghost, could come back and do all sorts of powerful things. But it's like the Ascended in Stargate.
Why doesn't he do anything then?
Plus, some
This
exterior
is
thing says no,
another.
says it's not
this
wise
is-
to do that.
This
Basically,
is another problem I have with the consistency of the concepts, because they say, "Oh, this could happen." Then it's like, then why didn't they? And like, "Oh, because this, or this." And it's like, but if he has the capacity to do so, this is like Brigida saving Elaine.
no, it's not like that because that's not Star Wars.
I'm saying the concept, not the actual same.
The concept.
I'm not saying it's a 1-to-1 ratio. I'm saying
Again,
if somebody can do something, and there's no reason for them to not do something, this isn't saying that they didn't come back because of something.
Are
Doesn't
you-
explain why they
there's
came to
two
the first
things, right?
place?
There's two things we're doing. You can either be talking about what happened in the setting itself, or engaging in a literary analysis of what happened in the setting itself. You're doing the latter.
I
You're
could technically
you're
be doing
the
both,
latter.
because I'm doing both.
No, you're not doing both. You're doing the latter. As soon as you bring any exterior like logic or whatever to it, you're doing the latter.
Are you saying logic is exterior to Star Wars?
Pretty much.
Star Wars is so incoherent; it has no logic to it whatsoever.
Logic is a function of the real world, not a function of fictional worlds.
No, logic is a function of any world, because
But
any
it
world
can be
cannot exist
different
without it.
in
The
There
the
can
real
be
world-
differences in worlds, but logical always has to be
No, the
consistent.
real world must flow on logic. It's designed that way. Okay?
Any world has to.
Fictional worlds don't have to be that way.
If
It
one
depends
person,
on how you define logic.
if
So
a person,
let's hear both definitions real quick.
well, I mean, you would have logic, which is a sequential patterning, something equals conquest.
Okay,
Or
so that's
conquest.
cause and effect.
Consequence. Sure, to some extent, yes, but and overall is like something that happens to someone has this consequence. But if you
Yeah.
have someone
Cause
who's
and
of the
effect.
same, well, like, let's say you have two humans in a random fantasy thing. One person gets launched into space and dies from suffocation. The other
Yeah.
one gets launched into space, does not die from suffocation. Neither of them have
Are
any
they
special
identical
abilities.
humans?
They're identical species. They're both human.
Okay,
And in
one
the
of
real
them doesn't
world,
They have all,
bonus
they have
power.
all the biological outworkings of each other. There's no difference in terms of they both have like if you and I were
They're
launched into
just
space
both
stage,
normal
we
humans.
both would die suffocation.
But
Yes,
okay,
just normal
in the
humans.
real
Yeah.
world,
One
right?
gets launched into
That's
space,
called internal
suffocate.
consistency. Yeah, sure.
or lack thereof, but yes.
But here's the
Okay,
thing.
yeah.
Did you enjoy it or not? Did you enjoy the story or not?
I don't see what enjoyment has to do with storytelling.
There's no reason for other than enjoyment.
I mean, yeah. The whole point of storytelling is to enjoy.
Storytelling has a different purpose. It could be it could be trying to convey a possible analogy. It could have this, that, or the other. But if you try to explain an analogy to somebody, but you do it so poorly that nobody understands what you're trying to convey,
Why are you
it's
trying
not
to
a
convey?
good analogy.
Why are you
That's
trying
not
to
a really
convey it?
analogy. To try to explain something to somebody about something. A
Okay,
story
sure.
is literally a sequential pattern. If you don't tell it in a way that makes sense to the person who's listening to it, then it's not a story. It's a lack of cohesion and just nonsense.
So you want a technical diagram?
No, you don't need a technical diagram. But if you say this person can do this thing, and then that person is prevented from doing that thing by the same person who says he can do that same thing, because every time that thing would be extremely useful, and it doesn't happen,
Okay.
then why
look at
does it
this.
happen?
The vast majority of people who like watch Star Wars or read a book, whatever,
A mass
read-
amount of people just listen because they want to be entertained. That does not mean it's a story. It means they're entertained by a blob of nonsense. A story has a requirement. It has to have something to be a story.
Okay, what is that thing?
Usually plot, characters,
Okay,
development, etc.
plot, characters,
It
development.
always has consistency, because otherwise the characters could literally do anything, but there's always something in the story or the plot that says they can't
So
do
if
that
it's
thing.
if it's
preventing them.
inconsistent, does that make it not a story, or does it make it a bad story?
Having some consistency but not complete consistency would just be a bad story. Having no consistency would not be a story.
What's the difference between having some consistency and having no consistency?
If I incoherently ramble to you a bunch of random things that have no connection to each other whatsoever,
No relation at all.
nothing, just literally like blue,
Just
purple,
random
orange, taco,
words.
ground
Okay.
beef. turtles
Yes,
and plants.
that's not a
Uh,
story. Sure.
it's just a ramble of random things. Like I just GTP, give me a ramble of random things, and it just blurts out a whole bunch of stuff. Is that a story, or is it random, incoherent
It's
nonsense?
random, incoherent nonsense. Yes.
It's not a story because there's no consistency. There's no plot. There's no story of developing of characters. Do they have a plot line themselves?
Okay, but
It's
are you
over-
implying Star Wars does not have any of that?
But you're talking about the structure of the story, not the contents.
The structure has to be coherent
But
for
the
the
content's
regular,
not.
for the content to be even considered coherent. The structure has to be.
Have
And the
you never
structure
read
is
nursery
a
rhymes?
plot.
Have you never read a nursery rhyme?
I mostly heard them.
The cow jumped over the moon.
Do you require full
Yes, but the
consistency
but the
then
setting
for
of the
it to
cow
be
jumped over the
a
moon is
story?
that the possibility of the cow jumping over the moon is possible. So it does. That's part of the actual context.
So the setting of Star Wars is where the Force can do this, and that's the way it works.
But then there's no consist because the Force is a structure.
No, there is consistency. It's just
Force
not
isn't a structure, it's
100%.
force.
So there's a universal structure for the story. There are planets, there are aliens, there are humans, whatever you want to. There's
Okay.
individual characters, there's animals. Those are all
We have
structural
connections.
things.
So we have
that
characters, we
connect.
have plot, we have developments, maybe.
You have them to put together
So
to
we have
make
a
what
story.
you call the structure. You have the structure of a story, but all those things have to be consistent with each other and how they interact with each other.
No.
Yes,
They just have to have some consistency.
you have to have any consistency.
They could be.
Yeah,
They could actually have no consistency. And
If you have no consistency, there's no structure. If there's no structure, you can't have a
and
plot.
guess
You can't
what?
have
That's
characters.
called punk music.
Yeah, okay, but I don't really
Punk
call
music
that-
has structure.
Does
It's
it?
called music beats.
It has
They have
almost
structure.
there's almost no structure to it.
But what if
There-
it has
there's
like
no-
random?
You're just going like
random
this
notes.
and hitting everything on the drums with no coherency whatsoever. That's not a song. That's not a
you
genre.
have not listened to enough metal music to if you.
I have listened to an ungodly level amount of metal music,
There-
punk included.
Again, the point is, if there's even if it's loosely logically, like horribly logically consistent, if it's just something a
If
presentation.
there is
of art-
anything that is vaguely
You have
consistent, even within a massively inconsistent world, otherwise it would still be a story. Just a bad one.
Can you have anything without a structure?
Yes,
What?
the vacuum of
random
space.
stuff.
The vacuum
Oh.
of space is a structure. It's a lack of something. That's what makes it space.
No, but it's a lack of structure as well.
It's a lack of physical structure, but it's not a lack of structure.
It's a lack of everything.
There is literally nothing
Well,
there.
it's not. There is something there. There is
Which is-
rocks, asteroids, planets,
No,
atmospheres,
space.
everything.
no, that's
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 not
not.
space.
No. I'm saying the vacuum and then everything that's inside.
That if there's
Not-
stuff inside,
it's-
it's not a vacuum, is it?
I'm not talking about the stuff in space, but the vacuum of space.
Is a galaxy in space or not?
Yes.
But it's not in the vacuum of space.
But well, the vacuum is the lack of what?
Everything.
So when you throw a satellite up into the atmosphere, the outer ring of the atmosphere, to where it's in space, is there space where it's at, or no space where it's at?
There's space everywhere, but there's not the vacuum of space everywhere.
Is the vacuum of space where that satellite is?
Not once it's there.
Okay. And how do you know that?
Because the satellite is there.
Because the structure is that it has to fulfill something. It has to fulfill a requirement.
But
No,
that's
in a
not
vacuum,
what structure
there's nothing
means.
there. But if there is what? No. There's different types. There's physical structure, like a house, a building, and then there's
Yeah.
a structure that's it's a non-physical entity. It's
Sure.
it's a thing that holds things together. Gravity being one of them. Gravity is a structure.
No, it's not.
Does it have a function of pulling or pushing?
But
or
it's not a structure.
Gravity doesn't push or pull.
What is this? What? Okay. What do you mean by structure when you say that?
Structure is something that is not like an abstract concept.
Okay, and you're saying gravity is an abstract concept?
Yes,
How is it an abstract concept?
because it's not a physical thing.
So a non-physical structure to a non-physical thing is not a structure to you?
I'm not sure what you were saying there.
So gravity only exists in certain situations.
Gravity is not a
correct?
structure, right? Because it doesn't have any essence, let's call it, to it.
Well, it doesn't have particles. Yes, I get that part. I'm saying it itself has a structure of how it itself functions.
Yeah, but that's not a structure.
Gravity
It
is the
does something, it
acceleration
does
that
not do
arises
something
through
else,
the curvature of space-time.
which is a structure.
Space-time might be a structure. Gravity.
Sure.
Everything has a structure in reality. Everything. Whether it's
Right,
lacking
so
a
how do you
physical or
define
lack.
structure?
So a structure, depending on the context, because it's going to matter depending on what it is, but a structure for like plot or story is going to be you have a thing, you have anything,
Sure.
anything the story's
Anything,
about, which would be a
sure.
plot, which has Earth or lack thereof Earth if it's in space, or it has to have space. That's the structure, is everything in space. Everything has to follow the rules of space for it to be in space, otherwise there's no point in putting it in space. You'd call it something else entirely, or you wouldn't call it anything at all, it'd just be a void. Like something that exists somewhere has a function, and that function is doing one thing and not doing something else at bare minimum. It could be much more complex, it could go much more different ways, be a lot of different things, but it's always going to be something that is not, when it's doing one thing, it's not doing something else. That's the polar opposite. It can't do both simultaneously unless there's another feature that comes in that it's not doing that, but it allows the other two to be doing them simultaneously.
Right. When I say structure, I mean the relation between objects.
So gravity's relation to anything physical is that it makes things go down.
Yeah, but it's not gravity.
Well, it's the effect of gravity.
Gravity
is the acceleration that is caused by
something that
space-time
happens in a structure, but it's not itself part of the structure.
I'm trying to.
Or here's another one. Gravity is a description of something that occurs in a structure.
Yes.
Okay. And the description can't have structure?
No, because
Why
it's not the structure itself.
Which structure? There's not just one structure. There's multiple.
So let's say we have.
Well, no. You overcome. There is one structure called the universe.
Sure.
And that has multiple structures inside of the universe.
It has parts of it that we considered substructures.
And they're still structures, though.
Yeah.
There's a bigger one that it houses other ones.
No,
Sure.
It could be broken down into other ones. They're still.
If I have a dollhouse inside of my actual house, is it still a house?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's not the analogy of the universe.
Structure.
Everything in the universe is part of the universe. It can't be broken apart.
Why not? I'm not saying broken apart. I'm saying it's inside under a structure.
It can be subdivided into smaller structures.
It's categories, yes.
But they still follow all the same rules as the universe.
Yes.
As far as we know, yes.
Gravity is a rule.
As far as we define.
Well,
but it's not
the
structure.
They're different structures. So there's the metaphysical structure, which is like a plot, development, etc., because they're not physical things. You don't like pop. It's not a pop-open book where like boom, the structure pops out, and then I have a building. This is Rand's house. That's not what structure is in the context of story.
Mm-hmm.
But there's physical structures that we can see every day, like literally houses, but there could also be other connections between people and how interactions work, etc. Like conversations are like us conversing is a structure. No. We have one person talking, another person responding or talking, because that's how a conversation works. It requires two parties.
Our conversing may be around the structure.
I know I'm probably going super autistic on this, but my point is that can you have a conversation with only one person?
Yes.
No. No. You can only have a conversation with two people.
You can talk to yourself. That's possible.
But you'd have to actually legitimately be aiming at yourself. If I said, "Hey, Sage," but you're not here, you can't hear me, I'm not having any way.
No, but you would need to say, "Hey, Bill Doman," and then you answer yourself because you're talking to yourself.
People do it all the time.
Then you have a conversation.
But is that a conversation?
Yes.
Yeah.
technically I'm not agreeing with you. I
Yeah,
understand what
but
you're
I'm
trying
not
to say.
agreeing with your definition of structure. So
Well, because in that conversation, you're technically treating yourself as two opposing people,
Well, that's how you
which
resolve
requires
problems.
two.
right, but there
Well,
is only
no.
one.
But there's the rule of two. Well, no, the conversation is two. Like, you're not physically next to me, but I'm still having a conversation with you. I don't need a physical entity of you to have a conversation. If I talk to you on a cell phone or whatever, or if I blacked off the webcam, I'm still having a conversation with you. There's still a second participant. Now, if I make that participant myself, it's technically two people because I'm conversing, and that conversation is
Right, but
directed
there's
right
only
back at
one of you, so it's not really, is it?
There's only one of me physically,
Okay.
yes.
Are you, when you talk to yourself, are you
I don't
answering
try to.
yourself legitimately, or are you just talking because, like, oh damn, I hit my hand? You know.
Well, I wouldn't call that a conversation.
Yeah,
I'd
that's
call that
not a
comment.
conversation.
Well, again, if
Yeah,
if
that's
you,
just one
like,
sentence.
for example, in IT, one
Well,
tool
if
we
I'm
use,
like listening to a song and say, "Man, I really like this song," I'm not necessarily conversing with myself.
Sure. But
I'm
if
just
you
saying
then
something out
answer to
loud.
yourself
for
and say,
example,
"Oh yeah, I also
if-
like it,"
if
I
I'm-
like this music. Yeah, me too. That would be, in my opinion, technically speaking, a conversation because I'm conversing
Yes.
with myself about
Mhm.
something. But that requires two. Just happens to be the same thing twice.
Yeah,
But it
so it's
always has
actually one.
two.
so I'll give you an example, right?
No.
So let's
It's
say
one twice.
I'm writing a report,
two,
right? For
which is one.
I'm constructing a new report to be generated from a
Twice.
database, right? Okay. I might say we're doing my coding and say, wait a minute, Matt. Is that field properly formatted for that type of information? And I'm telling myself, Matt, that might be an integer field, not a string field, and that's me talking to myself to resolve a problem.
Is a person with multiple personalities talking to themselves technically one person or two?
They can't. Supposedly, personalities can't actually talk to each other.
Okay, Gollum, Smeagol, and Gollum.
He's
talking
not
to
a
each
real
other.
person, though. He's a fictional person.
It doesn't matter. Is it a conversation?
Well,
or
if they
not?
record themselves and then talk to the other,
I guess
Yeah.
that the one way, the people with actual multiple personalities could do that. But
But if I'm,
Gollum,
if I'm literally going like, but Master's our friend. Master betrayed us. Like, he's not obviously talking to somebody else.
but he's
talking
not
to
a
himself,
real person
but
with
it is
multiple
somebody else.
personality disorder. He's not a real person.
Are you
So
saying that multi-personality disorder can't exist?
I'm saying
Yes.
every instance of
You
multiple
can't say yes.
personality
You don't
disorder
know
that,
yet. We have no
based,
evidence.
based on having taken classes in psychology and having read about it for other reasons, okay, that multiple personality disorder, they can't talk to each other. In fact, one of the ways you cure them of it is by breaking down the barriers in their brain, their structure, so that the one personality that may be there to protect them, it merges with the one that's there to, enjoy Star Wars or something, like whatever the personality is there for.
One could argue Gollum is there to protect Smeagol.
But again,
Yeah.
Tolkien did not construct him as a real person with multiple personality disorder.
We're not talking about whether he is a real individual or he was doing that, this or that, or the other. What we're saying is that when somebody does that, is that a conversation?
I would say yes.
But it's not the same
It's-
person at the same time. It's a different personality talking to a different personality, which is two interactions.
In
don't
that
know- we don't know
specific
that with
example, yes.
It's all what I'm saying is a conversation requires two. If you send it out to the ether and bring it back, you have to answer. So if there's a question and there's an answer, that's two
Yeah.
participations.
Sure.
It doesn't require necessarily two individuals.
Gollum's example has two personalities that sort of act separately from one another.
Well, we're
And
interpreting
in
it
our
that way.
hypothetical scenario,
But all
you
I'm
have the
saying
same
is for a
person.
conversation is you have a person speaking and a person answering.
Sure.
If you have a person speaking and no answer, it's not a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a speaker and you have an answerer, you have two things required.
Yeah.
Sure.
Same thing for people. Same thing for not people.
So you could answer yourself.
It's the conversation is a structure. You could answer yourself, but you're participating two things. It's
You
still
said
going
you
to
need
be
two
the rule of
things.
two.
You said you need to answer the questions. All you answer the question, you're conversing with yourself.
Yes, but you're doing two things. You're not doing one thing. It's not just a single participant, per se, technically speaking. Because you have one person asking and one person answering. It doesn't matter. It's the same person. It's just there's a person asking and a person answering.
Thank you for agreeing with us.
Yes.
So I'm saying a one person
Mm-hmm.
plus another person could be the same person equals conversation.
Yeah, but if it's the
One
same
person
it is
plus
one person.
nothing. No. I'm saying it doesn't have. You can reuse the same person. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but that's not how that works.
One person plus one person, not one person and then a totally different person equals. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
Yeah, but
one
then
person plus one person equals conversation.
But the math doesn't check out because
Wait,
then
wait,
you
wait.
have
Let's
one
say
person
yes.
plus
Let's
one person
hypothetically let's say
equals
yes.
one
Continue
person.
your thought.
1 plus 1 equals 1. That's what you're essentially saying now.
No.
No.
Yes.
Wait,
One
wait,
plus
wait.
one
So
was still
say,
one plus one does not equal a number.
hypothetically. So
It's-
let's say we agree with you.
Sequential
Continue your thought.
patterns. It's not a sequential pattern. Does not equate just mathematics or in terms of arithmetic. It does not mean 1 plus 1 equals 2. It means 1 plus 1 equals conversation. But what the one is can be replaced, algorithmically speaking, with the same person.
Right, but then you're not talking plus 1 and you just have one person.
No, because the act, in logic, it's the act. The act and an act equals what? Another act, or the consequence of those two acts put together.
Yes.
So eating and digesting food, I'm the same person, but the same acts, they're different acts. Like
You
speaking
do
and
different
answering.
things, sure.
So asking a question and answering a question are two different acts, but can be done by the same person
Yeah,
and still equal the same thing.
sure.
So that's the same thing with conversations. So if I say sage plus sage equals something
Two
else,
sages, yes.
no, it doesn't have to be two individually different sages.
No, but you're doing it wrong. You can't say sage plus sage. You have to say sage asking a question or something plus
Well,
sage
asking
answering a question is a conversation of sage
but sage
with
is technically
himself.
not required, is my point.
Sure. So you
Like
can
your
have a
action-
conversation without people.
I'm saying
Wait a
your
minute.
action. Well, the question can't be asked and the answer can't be responded to or given if there is no one giving it.
Right.
Logically required.
Sure.
What I'm saying is that if I just say sage plus sage equals, we'd have 0. It'd just be sage. But if you're saying in an action form, so question asked plus question answered equals
Yeah, the
conversation.
person form is wrong. You can't do that
Why?
because you're adding two of a person together to get one person.
No, because the amount of persons is irrelevant.
Yeah, but
I'm saying
you're
that two actions are
making
required
it
for a
relevant
No, I'm saying two
by
actions are
doing
required
your
for a conversation.
nonsense mathematics.
It's not nonsense, math. Okay,
It
I'm not
is
doing arithmetic.
nonsense.
I gotta
You're
go.
thinking I'm doing okay. Well,
Yeah, but that is
Yeah,
what
Matt.
you.
So see you all later. Continue. I will
That's
watch the rest
literally
of
what
this.
you say.
Later, guys. Later, everyone.
Yeah, I
Matt.
probably have to go in.
Pray
like
for my
20
soul.
minutes.
you're not getting out of this quite
The
yet,
last
Sage.
episode of the Crapolite review now. Pray for me, my friend.
No, we have half an hour to talk about this, right? Still.
Okay, we'll go
But-
for it. So what I'm saying is you're trying to pull the arithmetic into it. I'm pulling the sequential.
No,
pattern.
you're putting the arithmetic in there by saying
not applying
one
any-
person plus one person.
No. I'm not saying one person plus one person. I'm saying one
That's
action plus one
literally what
action.
you said the entire time.
I said if we were taking one person asking themselves the thing, it would be in
Yeah.
that situation, and I was using that as a qualifier so you'd
Yeah,
understand.
but you
the
don't
question.
have 1 plus 1 person. You have asking plus answering.
Yes, but asking requires what?
Someone.
person.
Sure.
And answering requires what?
Also a person.
Yes, but does not require both of those persons to be different people.
Yes, sure.
So you can have a conversation with yourself, but it
Yeah.
still requires two actions.
Two actions, yes.
Yes, a
Not two
conversation
people.
is two actions at bare minimum. It can be multiples if there's more people involved,
Sure.
or more questions, or more answers, etc.
Yeah.
Because like there's 3 different answers. whatever.
Ideally, you want to have a longer conversation. Well, maybe.
I'm simplifying it to a single and a single.
Yeah,
and
but
then
your
working off of there.
simplification is stupid
How is it stupid?
because you're trying to turn the acts into people.
No, I'm turning the acts into a structure. The structure of a conversation requires, at bare minimum, 2
Yeah, then
things.
leave out
But those
the
2 things
random
require something
people
to trigger them off.
addition.
No. Okay. So action plus action, the
Yeah, is a
structure
conversation. Sure.
is a conversation. But the conversation requires more for that structure to function. More than the question and the answer, correct?
Yeah, sure.
That structure requires something asking and something answering.
Yeah.
It can be an animal. It can be a person, like a human person.
Well, if they could speak.
Well, no, they can communicate with each other. Like
Can
a
they
dog if the dog barks at another dog and the dog responds, it's technically a question, it's technically an answer. It may be incoherent in their what they understand each other's saying, but they still technically participated. That's the whole point of making animal noises.
That's a slightly dodgy one, but sure.
It's not, well, as far as we understand how language works for animals and such, but it makes logical sense regardless of the actual outcoming. So when I say a structure, so the Force is a structure. It functions depending upon how you utilize it. So what I'm saying is that when the Jedi say, here's the code, this is how the Force functions. But it's in fact not how the Force functions.
Yeah.
It's a
People
way.
can be wrong.
It's a way. Exactly. Like I love pointing this out in Wheel of Time, is that in Wheel of Time, people make statements like, we're in the right. White cloaks, anybody? But every single time that happens, it's their belief that that's the way it happens, not necessarily how it happens.
Sure.
Like the creator's on our side. Is he though? You sure about that? You sure about that? Like, I
think he probably is in the grand scheme of things.
Well, no, I don't think the creator approves of them just picking a person saying, "Oh, you disagree with me? You're a dark friend." I don't think the creator condones that. That's not the creator's MO.
But the creator might agree still.
On something, sure.
If it's
on everything,
on the large scale means less dark friends, right? I guess.
But if your behavior is that of a dark friend the entire time, I mean, they are bullies. Yeah, they are dark friends in all but name. Like,
but
they'll torture a person who's randomly innocent because,
Is bullying necessarily a requirement for being a dark friend?
No, I'm saying it's something that a dark friend would do. Would
a dark friend necessarily do that?
Would a dark friend torture somebody? Absolutely.
Necessarily.
Well, it's not the only thing that makes them a dark friend, but it is a dark friend feature.
So if you torture someone, for example, that means you're a dark friend.
Not just torturing somebody. Picking a person, deciding that they're guilty, and torturing them to get them, like Inquisition.
Right. So that means if you do that, that makes you a dark friend.
I'm not saying that makes you a dark friend. I'm saying that's something that the dark friends would do. They would torture you for no reason.
Would they?
Beyond their own preferences of what that reason could be. Well, yeah, they murder you for no reason.
Every single dark friend would do that.
It doesn't have to be every single. It's a behavior of a dark friend. It's not the only behavior of a dark friend. Dark friends are just as complex.
Yeah, because they're just people. It's people behavior.
Yes, but there are some things that dark friends will do that even regular criminals and murderers won't do. That's the ones who hang themselves because they couldn't believe what they saw.
Sure.
Like it's an extremity, but when you have if you had even just a murderer, not even a dark friend, just a murderer, and then the White Cloaks go and murder somebody, would the creator smile upon a murderer?
If they murder a murderer, then yes.
But it wouldn't be murder then, because you can only murder an innocent.
So they wouldn't have murdered anyone. Problem solved.
Yes. But I'm saying if you are murdering, and the context is that you have, in fact,
murdered, he may not agree with every single instance. But if
you think the creator would have any instance in which an innocent dying to somebody,
no, that's not what I'm saying.
Is good.
He may not agree with the White Cloaks doing that in every instance, but he might agree on the whole that the actions are potentially beneficial if it has the result of actually reducing the dark friend population.
There's absolutely no evidence that it is reducing the dark friend
population. No, but it doesn't matter.
Well, yes, it does, because if the requirement is that it does reduce the
no, because this is a hypothetical. If that is the case, then the creator could potentially be on their side.
If he's an imperfect deity, then sure. If he's a perfect one, no.
Why not?
Because a perfect deity would have perfect morals, and you
Right.
can't have perfect
So a
morals
perfect
and then back
deity
something
is
that's not
not
good.
on anyone's side then.
No, it'd be on the side of those who follow the morality that is existence under perfection.
Right.
But
Which could be the White Cloaks.
why would it be the White Cloaks?
They might follow the morality, but they're imperfect, so they have
they're
potentially
not
a bit
following
too
it if it's-
zealousness.
Well, yes, but zealousness can make you not follow perfect morals.
Sure.
So therefore, they're not following the morals; they're following zealousness,
Yeah.
which is not what perfect morals are. And then
Okay.
the being that is of perfect morals and is on the side of perfect morals would not go to you who are totally bastardizing
Right.
the perfect morals and say, "Yeah, I'm on their side." That wouldn't happen.
How much deviation from the perfect morals is allowed?
Put it this way: Varen being a dark friend. Spoilers. Varen being a dark friend.
You should say spoilers before doing that.
It's been out for a long time. It's their fault for not reading it. They'll forget by the time they get there anyway. Varen being a dark friend, but following the perfect morals and law sets.
Does she follow the perfect morals?
We don't know everything in every instance, but assuming she does follow all the perfect.
Assuming she does.
Because all we know of what her actions are is what her actions are. We don't know what she does when she isn't shown. She could potentially be doing bad things, but until we see it, we don't know for sure.
Okay.
But we do see her doing good things while simultaneously being a dark friend.
Right. So
But
White Cloaks.
She's technically a
There are
dark
White
friend
Cloaks
only in name.
that we see do good things.
There are, but that's not the White Cloaks as a whole. That's just like she's a
The
dark
White
friend
Cloaks
and it's
as
not
a
her
whole might intend to do
the road
good
to hell
things.
is paved in good intentions.
But
exactly.
Yes, but they might be
The reason
following
it's
the
called the
perfect
road
morals,
to hell.
but
But they're
maybe
literally
some
not.
of them are not.
Well, if you murder
Is an
innocent
organization necessarily bad enough, let's say?
yes, dark friends.
No, bad enough to be completely devoid of being considered reasonable for the creator to be on your side. If only part of the organization is maybe corrupt or something.
Is the whole corrupt if part of it's corrupt? Is that what you're asking?
Is the creator necessarily not condoning anything if only part of it is bad?
Well, that's what I was saying. If it's perfect, then he wouldn't condone it at all. And if he was imperfect, he could, hypothetically. We obviously don't know.
Right, so what you're saying essentially is that organizations have a different standard than individuals.
So, which organization is in effect if Ordith has his group of White Cloaks and Bornhold has his group of White Cloaks? Which one is White Cloaks?
Right, that's the whole issue, isn't it?
Well, not really, because only one of them is White Cloaks.
Sure. Yeah, there's Dark Friends.
Yes, but one is literally not a White Cloak because they don't follow even the White Cloak code.
Sure. So what's then your
problem? Claiming that you're doing the right thing does not mean you're doing the right thing. And thus...
Right, but what is the right thing?
Well, that depends on if it's a perfect moral being or a non-perfect. We don't know because he never
right,
talked
so,
about whether...
But that's the issue, though. If it's a perfect
Deism doesn't
moral
hold
being,
morality that I can understand. But
and if the perfect moral being doesn't condone anything that is not perfectly moral, then there
a perfect
are
moral being would condemn you for doing immoral things. That's what
sure
morality would be. So if you are doing it,
it would condemn everyone because no one follows perfect morality.
Welcome to Christianity, buddy.
Right. but then you can say that the creator is on no one's side.
Well, he's on the side of everyone who follows those morals.
Yeah, but no one does.
But whose fault is that?
The creator.
No, because the creator's not controlling anyone's actions.
No, but the creator made them able to do that.
Giving you arms so that you can do stuff with your arms does not mean he made it so you could throttle somebody. That's
No, he
not
did.
how that works. No, he didn't.
He
gave you the
made it
capacity
possible
to-
for you to do that.
No.
Otherwise, if he hadn't given you
He
arms,
gave you the
you wouldn't be able.
capacity
Yeah,
to do
that's what I'm saying.
anything that's logically possible, but
Mhm.
he did not create the actions in which you take.
I'm not saying he did.
That's literally what you just said.
I said he makes it possible for you to do that.
Not responsible for what you do.
I'm not saying responsible. I'm saying he makes it possible. That's different.
He makes the circumstances possible. He does not make the actual thing itself possible.
Yeah, he does.
How?
By allowing it.
No. Allowing it just means that's free will. Which
Allowing
happens
it
just for choice
means
to
he
exist.
makes it possible.
No, he makes the choice possible. He doesn't make the position
Yeah.
possible. No, because
Making the
you-
choice possible is
the
making
creator-
the action
if the-
possible.
if the creator creates an ecosystem,
Yes.
ecosystem functions completely, purely on its own. It does not require
Sure.
constant direct intervention.
hmm
It does not require anything. It's a watch mechanism. Every mechanism
yeah.
does its thing.
Sure.
Everything. You have the circle of life. You have all that kind of stuff.
hmm
Does not require constant input. Does not require anything
Mhm.
else. If one of those things stops functioning because something else that was created causes it to function, like for example, a gear breaks inside of a watch and that little piece jumps in between other two pieces, causing them to break and something else to break and nothing to break. That's not the watchmaker who made it to do that. But the
No.
watchmaker gave it the ability to do that.
Yes, which is the same thing.
No, because having a natural body means you can do anything that's naturally possible or naturally logical.
Sure.
But creating a system and saying, all right,
Yeah,
you're in
but
your own
see, the
playground.
creator made logic, so he is responsible for everything that's logically possible. Well, he makes everything
No,
that's
no, no, no,
logically
no, no.
possible.
You almost stepped in a very dangerous zone.
Yeah. Responsible is not the word I wanted to use.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
it's no.
So
By making
creator-
logic, he decides everything that is possible within that logic.
So the creator in the Wheel of Time allegedly
don't know.
created the Dark One.
Sure.
Allegedly.
Oh, wow.
I don't really understand how that
I
works.
don't
but
think that's
it's never
ever
told.
actually mentioned.
He blocks them in an area, so he's
Yeah,
either
but-
more powerful and puts the equal, but because we know the Dark One's not equal because he'd lose to a one-on-one versus the creator. So the Dark One
Yeah,
is
I
locked
mean,
away.
he's locked away, but not necessarily created by the creator.
Well, how else does he get there?
Well, I don't fucking know. Where did the creator come
Exactly.
from?
Well, the creator at least can be eternal potentially,
Why can't the Dark One be?
because corruption is never natural. We know this from Lord of the Rings specifically, exclusively, and that's how morals work too.
Right, but see,
You don't
The
have
Wheel of
evil without
Time.
good, but you can have good without evil.
the Wheel of Time is not Lord of the Rings.
It's not exclusively. It's a structure. Again, back to structures. The
Yeah, but
structure
you
of
can
good
have
versus evil.
different structures.
Oh, there's a good one. Structures, good versus evil. Neither of them's physical, but they have physical aspects, and they have non-physical aspects, but it's still a structure.
Yeah, but that, I
within
wouldn't call
another
that a
structure.
structure, though.
But it is a structure.
No,
How do you know something's good and how do you know something's evil?
you don't really.
Well, you do, because obviously you
How?
try to one good and one evil.
Yeah, but that's just my opinion.
That's not an opinion. It's a structure based off of what? Usually a moral code or a moral understanding
sure.
of something. So if you get
But
punched
those
in
are all
the face-
based on opinions.
I don't know. That sounds like an opinion to me. But
Yeah, yeah, because everything ultimately is opinion based.
well, no,
Well, every
necessarily.
rule.
If
we
you have a
make-
moral perfect being, then no, it's objective.
Well, no, it's just the opinion of the perfect moral being.
Well, no, the moral perfect being is the standard. It's an objective standard. It's
Right,
outside
but we
of you,
can't
and it's
measure it.
outside of me. You don't need to measure it.
Then how would you know?
Well, gravity exists, but you can't measure it.
Okay, but how do you know what is good?
How do you know what is good?
Yes.
I mean, if the perfect being tells you what it is and what isn't good,
Right, but
that's usually a good
Did
measurement.
did the perfect being tell you directly?
In Wheel of Time, no
No,
idea.
no. Yeah, I don't know either.
Because this is the problem with not having the best world building skills in the world, is because these are questions that need to be asked in some instance. If you're going to interact with that, would Eru Luvatar create a perfect moral system? Well, yes, because we know that what Melkor was doing was not good, because what he was trying to do was
No, but
assert
it was
authority.
part of the plan.
Not necessarily. The plan went ahead despite that. Would be the better way to explain.
No. I think Eru specifically tells Melkor that in his doing evil, he creates exactly what Eru intended in turning it into goodness somehow.
It's more of a term of despite think of it in the Catholic sense, or the Tolkien's understanding of Catholic theology and whatnot, where it's like, what you meant for evil, I used for good. The whole story of Joseph or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So, despite Melkor trying to do his own thing, Eru still uses that to do his completion.
Yeah, but
it does not mean that he
Eru's
intended
also
for him to
sort
do the
of
wrong thing.
Is that the correct term?
What?
Precognitions?
I mean, Eru is all perfection, as far as we know.
Yes. So he knows that Melkor does that, and decides,
and he also grants moral laws to the Valar.
Sure.
So he's a perfect moral lawgiver, and the Valar are the not perfect beings.
So in the Lord of the Rings universe, we know the morals.
Yes, because world building was epic.
Yes. In the Wheel of Time, we
don't know, except in certain instances, because the function of the Dark One is the presence of corruption and complete pure wickedness. And the creator did not have that in mind. It was not intended to be part of it.
Well, we don't know.
It was available. Do we? Because if
we
Lanfear had never done the bore, arguably would never have the Dark One interfere, and everything would just be plain old boring evil.
Right.
Now you have, when the Dark One enters into the equation, it becomes an active evil. It's not a passive evil.
Sure.
That's the ultimate
how do you know
difference.
The Dark One's evil?
By his literal actions.
Yeah, but how do you know those actions are evil?
Because of how the pattern is constructed by the creator.
Okay, fair enough.
The creator, I want to create life. Dark One, I want to destroy. Yes, polar opposites. They give you motivations of both characters.
But
now we don't know the exact moral capacities of the creator, but we do know the exact moral capacities of the Dark One because
we don't.
His motivations.
We just know part of it.
No, we know his motivations.
His entire motivations for everything he ever does.
Yes, because the Dark One is a very simple being. It doesn't make sense to the humans he's interacting with.
Fair enough.
But he himself, no, because even is it Morden? Ishamael 2.0. Is it Morden? There's so many. There's Ishamael, and then there's I think Morden.
Yeah, I think he's called Morden.
There's too many M names. M. Night Shyamalan, whatever.
I don't think that's a Wheel of Time character.
He's the Forsaken, didn't you know? But Moradin explains, because he's kind of lining up with the Dark One.
But is he really?
He's aligning with what the Dark One wants to do. But the Dark One, like everybody else, didn't know. They're like, oh, he's going to conquer the world and we'll be the rulers. When that's not the motivation that the Dark One had.
Yeah, sure.
He may have lied to them and said that was it, but that's not what his actual motivation is. Because we could see from a third party, from a viewer outside the meta gaming or whatever, if you want to.
Well, but we don't know if he had maybe ulterior motives behind that, even still.
But we do, because we see every interaction he has with everybody, and then we overlap them.
Right. So
that's how you decipher someone's motivations.
yeah,
Because if I tell you my motivation and I behave a totally different, it's not my motivation.
if you have limited access to someone's actions, let's say, you can't ever fully determine their motivations.
I'd have to look at the technicalities of that much closer, but that would take a lot longer to do.
Right. So, for example, if you only talk to me every, let's say, Thursday, right? You know what I'm saying on these streams, but
Yes.
you can't from that reconstruct every single motivation I have, because
True,
you don't know
I am bound
what
by
I
the
am
dimensions
doing
that you are.
on, let's say, Tuesdays.
But I am bound by the same dimension you are bound. But a reader is not bound by that.
No, it doesn't matter.
It does. Because a reader is watching you on Tuesdays.
No,
Yes.
because the Tuesday is not actually written in the book.
A specific Tuesday might not be, but
I'm not
Tuesday, that's
a
bit of a
POV
stretch.
character, right? I only show up when I am in the neighborhood of a POV character.
Every instance of you communicating with somebody, there is a point of view, but it could be just a point of view of
it's not
observation.
one recorded in the book, because the book's not actually set in my country.
No book can use every possible point of view from every single view at all times.
And thus the only interactions we have with the Dark One.
But I can make a
POV.
reasonable case for what your needs.
Sure, but you will never be able to fully determine whether or not that reasonable case is 100% correct.
From a reasonable perspective, yes. From a just random percentage of numbers, no.
No, it's definitely true.
If you say, here's my motivation, and then your actions push you towards that motivation, despite having other deception or other things like that added into the mix, it's reasonable to assume that what your motivations are, yes.
But you will never be certain.
Reasonable is the only thing you can do. Everything else is nonsense. Yes.
So you say, oh, he has a very simple motivation. It's definitely 100% exactly this one.
Well, I mean, every major evil character in every major story of any type, or possibly even minor, are always simple individuals.
Perhaps.
Evil's a very simple thing. It's not a complex thing.
Is it simple?
It is. It's always simple.
And so an evil character can only have the one single simple motivation and no others.
A character being evil is simple. A character behaving in any other shape or form can be complex, but their actual means to being evil is simple.
But their reason for being evil,
yes, is simple. But they can be complex characters,
right?
To have a simple reason. That's what I'm not.
Do they necessarily have
not complex? I'm saying his motivations are simple. His behavior is complex.
Yeah, but you don't know.
You know he deceives one group of people.
What you think are his motivations is the full set of his motivations.
That's what we get from Moradin's perspective. From the
but Moradin is not the Dark One.
I'm not saying Moradin's the end all be all.
So he doesn't have, let's call it, good knowledge.
Can a detective ever have complete full knowledge of a crime scene and ever grant an actual proper execution of a criminal's trial or whatever?
He can give a most likely one.
He can give a reasonable, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. But that's based off of forms of evidence, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That they have to gather, or at least they should be gathering, I should say.
Yeah.
They should be gathering. And they have motives in which they can figure out why somebody does what they do based off of the questions they ask and whatnot.
Well, that's questionable.
Well, that literally is why they have this thing called motive or MO.
Yeah, but
that's a function in which detectives will utilize.
Sure.
For example, when I was referencing When I was referencing the flicker,
But whether or not they're
uh,
accurate is a
insect
different
thing.
question.
It's a 50-50 on that one, depending upon the context for that. But
Mhm.
yes. But when I say the whole trap for Rand and the flies and everything,
Mhm.
it's reasonable to say it wasn't put on Fane because put on Fane has no magical capacities and wants Rand
Well,
specifically to get to him.
he did get merged with what's his
With a
name?
person, Ordeef,
Oh, well, no, I'm
or
totally
Mordeth.
thinking
Mordeth.
Mordeth, yes. And Mordeth does have some magical stuff going on.
He doesn't have that kind of magical stuff, though.
Well, maybe he does.
He can't create portals and just somewhere. He can't behave this way. What he has is the power of suspicion.
No, he can also like go through walls or stuff.
Put on Fane can't. Mordeth could.
Yeah.
Because
So
Mordeth became
he might have some
spirit
slightly
or
other
whatever.
weird possible things.
He does. He
It
does
could
have the weird
be
stuff with all Mashadar and stuff.
conceivably possible that he can set up a trap.
Can Mashadar
I don't know.
or Machin Shin create a trap like that?
Well, no, they don't have any mental capacity, let's call it.
You don't need a mental capacity to set a trap. You just need to poop on the ground something that's magical that can cause people to get caught.
No, but see, to set up a trap specifically requires intent to trap something.
Not necessarily. In most
Otherwise,
situations, I agree with
it's
you.
just a random biohazard or something. I don't know.
It could still be a trap if it traps something.
No. A trap, it's only a trap if its intention is to trap people.
So if I am completely irresponsible, I do not condone this actions. Go out and buy a 6-pack of sodas, and I throw the plastic thing into the ocean, not intending to catch a turtle, but a turtle gets caught in it.
Yeah, it's not a trap. It's an environmental hazard.
He's trapped in it.
He's trapped, but it's not a trap.
It's not an intentional trap. It's still a trap.
No, I don't.
Well, he wouldn't be trapped in a non-trap. You don't get trapped in non-traps. If a fire happens in a building, and you're in a building with no windows and no way to escape except the door, and the fire causes something to burn and
you
fall
can't get out, you're trapped.
You are
but
trapped.
It is not
a trap, but it is not an intentional trap.
No.
You can't leave. You are trapped. And that's the same function a trap has. It just does not have an intentionalness to it. AKA mindless traps.
Yeah,
or accidental traps or something like that. Well, you can disagree and be wrong. It's okay. But I'm saying is
that traps can be accidental.
So you can't be trapped on accident.
No, being trapped is different from being in a trap.
How can one be trapped but not be in a trap?
Okay, let's say you accidentally, I don't know.
You just told me there's no accidentals allowed.
No, it's not a trap.
Well,
but you can get trapped. Right? Let's say you walk through a dense jungle.
Okay, Admiral Akbar. You were saying?
Let's hypothetically think of a super dense jungle with all sorts of vines sticking around or whatever, right? Would you call that a trap?
Can you escape?
You can escape at the moment, yes.
Then why would it be a trap? Because you're not trapped.
No, because it's just a jungle environment.
The
and if you walk,
irrelevant.
and then you trip and you fall into some vines, and then they sort of you're stuck, and you're trapped there.
Is this like a parody?
Trap.
It's a cartoon. We're like,
yeah, I don't know. It could be. Or if something falls onto you. Let's say you're
not. If you're not confined, you can't escape. If you are not trapped, you can't be in a trap. It's literally the definitional aspect.
A trap traps people, sure.
So if there's a
non-traps can also trap people.
If there's a pitfall created by an earthquake or something like that, and you're walking around the jungle and you fall into the pit. Are you trapped?
You're trapped, yes.
So it's a trap.
No.
It's not intentional. It's not an intentional trap,
No.
but it's still a trap because you can't get out.
You are trapped, but it's not a trap.
How can you be trapped and not be in a trap?
Because to be trapped and a trap are different things.
But a word can have two different meanings, but
Yes,
be the same thing.
which is where
both
this comes in.
simultaneously. No. I'm
Being
saying like
trapped is a
you can be
different
trapped
meaning to
in
being
something,
in a trap.
but you're saying something that is a trap is named specifically and exclusively a trap. What I'm saying is that if you are trapped, it becomes a trap. But you're saying that something has to intellectually think about it and have intent behind it in order for it
Yes.
to be a trap,
Mhm.
which that is a form of trap, but it is not exclusively the only
Right, okay.
trap.
Let's do it a bit differently. Instead of using the word trapped, you would use the word stuck in those situations where it is not intentional.
That is a word you could use, but there are also
Yes,
definitions
because the
based on
meaning
these.
of the verb to be trapped is equivalent to the verb to be stuck. But the meaning of the word a trap
But they also have different
is very specifically only when it is intentionally placed somewhere.
and that will depend on the quote unquote trap, because if I'm in a room
Mhm.
that I can move around freely, I am both stuck and not stuck because I can move.
Yes,
But I'm
but you
still
are
trapped.
stuck in the room.
That's what I'm saying, is you are both stuck and not stuck. It's the same word, but it has two
Mhm.
different connotations.
And similarly,
But
you are
if you are
both trapped
trapped,
and not trapped.
but you are trapped because you can't leave. That's all was required for a trap, is you cannot leave.
But you can leave.
But you can't, because the
No, you can.
door is blocked by the bookshelf.
Yeah,
that
but you
burned and fell
can
in front.
leave the specific spot that you're in.
But the specific spot's not what's trapped you because you can move.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm saying, like, if you
It
have a
doesn't matter.
box, and there's a
Mhm.
door, you have movement. Hey, let's use I'm out from the bottom of the well. Wheel of Time reference. If you're at the
Okay.
bottom of a well and you can't get out the well,
Mhm.
you are trapped.
Trapped.
You are
But the
not
well is
limited.
not a trap. It's
not
a
an
well.
intended. It's not an intended trap. It can
Well,
still
it
trap.
could be intended, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's not inherently intended as a trap. It's a
Yeah.
well. It's designed just to get water.
Mhm.
That's what a well is. Otherwise, it's just a trap. It's not a well. But
Mhm.
if you have a well that somebody falls into or slips into or whatever other word you want to use, the definition is they get to the bottom of the well and they can't get out. It's
Yeah.
a trap. They are trapped, but they are not necessarily restrained in the trap.
Mhm.
If you are restrained in the trap, you are stuck in a stuck trap, I guess.
Yes, but
Both-
you're also
both
stuck in the
applications-
well, regardless.
But that's what I'm saying, is you are both stuck and can't move and
You
stuck in
You
the well.
could say you are restrained in the well.
But then we're
and
moving
not
words, but that word also means the connotation will change.
Yes.
That's why you use some words over other words. That's why I would use the word
Mhm,
trap
exactly.
before I would use
But trap
restrained. Because
is
stuck
never
can both
used.
mean stuck can both mean trapped and restrained, but restrained and trapped don't necessarily mean the same thing.
Sure, yeah.
Because a restraint isn't necessarily permanent.
But a trap is necessarily intentional.
It's not necessarily intentional.
Yeah.
No.
Because
Why would it be-
otherwise it's not a trap.
Well, if I stick a jug out and I put a whole bunch of bear traps out, but I stick this jug out and it has some honey in it, but I just left it there completely on accident. And then I come back to check the bear traps the next day and there's a bunny stuck in the jar because it was trying to get the honey.
Then
None of my
it's not a
traps
trap.
went off, but I trapped a rabbit
You caught a rabbit
completely on accident.
on accident, but
In a
it's not
trap,
a trap
and it cannot
because
escape.
It's a jar of honey. It's not a trap.
But
Do bunnies
you're
want
not,
to go?
you're not
honey?
understanding the connotation in terms of words.
No, I am.
Something that is not inherent can become something else. It's
Sure.
just not inherent.
But the definition of a trap requires
What is a
intent.
death trap?
It's a trap that kills you.
Well, a bear
Presumably.
a bear trap can kill you from blood loss,
Wow.
but doesn't mean it kills
Okay,
you.
a
as
trap that
intended purpose.
necessarily kill you, I guess.
So now you're changing the context, good sir. But a death trap is something in which you are caught and die because you cannot escape.
Sure.
That's a generic term for death trap. Now, if the bunny is caught in a jug
Does
and
it die?
cannot leave,
What?
and cannot leave, and never does leave, and dies from starvation, infection, something else comes along and eats it, it dies. The jar became a death trap because they died because of it. It's not intended to be a death
that
trap.
works that way.
Well, a death trap does not need to be necessary or intended.
Okay,
It's just
fair
the
enough.
result of. And thus, neither does a trap have to be.
No, I still
intentional.
disagree there.
Oh my gosh. A death trap and a trap are the same thing. It's just what happens to the person
No,
afterwards.
there's not.
Yes, because a death trap means you died in a trap. A trap is that minus the dying requirement.
Right, so let's say
I'm trapped in the Force.
Yes. You mean in the trap you die? Or because of the trap?
Either. They're interchangeable. That's my point. Is that technicalities allow you to do things. That's why language is so amazing.
Okay, so let's say
when it comes to pedantry,
I step into a bear trap.
Yes.
And the bear trap is stuck to the ground.
Not inherently a death trap.
Right. And I can't move anymore because I am incapable of removing the bear trap.
You are both
so
stuck,
I'm stuck
but not
there.
stuck.
Yeah.
You're both stuck and not stuck. You are stuck because your leg is stuck in the trap.
Then hypothetically, someone comes along and kills me for some reason. Does the trap automatically become a death trap?
Not inherently. Because something outside of the trap killed you.
Right, but I'm still in the trap.
You are in the trap, but it's not a death trap. A death trap is a specific thing in which...
Right, so a death trap is a trap that kills you.
Not inherently. It can start out as, like, for example, if you get your leg stuck in a bear trap, and you're bleeding profusely, because obviously your leg's stuck in a bear trap, then you could bleed out and die, and thus it becomes a death trap because you died from it. Death was the outcome of the trap.
Yeah, I don't think that works that way.
So if you're in a car and you go flying off of the interstate into an ocean and it sinks and you run out of oxygen, the car is a death trap. If you break it open and it fills with water and you drown,
but I think
it's a death trap
is not necessarily related to traps then.
Well, no, because a car can be a trap. You can't, if you can't leave the car, you are trapped in the car.
You're trapped, sure, but it's not a trap.
It's not an intended trap, or it might be,
and thus it's not a trap.
But if somebody designs it to be, it's an inherent. It wouldn't be an inherent.
Yeah, but if someone designs a car to be a trap, that is a bit silly, isn't it?
Well, not if you're trying to kill somebody,
Okay, fair
enough. Cutting someone's brakes so they can't stop and run into somebody else and die.
Then it becomes a death trap. Yes.
Hey, look at that! It became a death trap. It's not.
But that's intentional, because someone cut the
cutting of the brakes was intentional. The death trap can, but the
the cutting of the brakes turns the car into a trap.
A death trap can be both intentional or unintentional.
Sure.
That's what I'm saying. It's not inherently, unless something specific was triggered to cause it. Like if you push somebody into a trap and they die because of the trap, it's a death trap technically because you intended for it to be.
That's a bit of a dodgy one.
Well, if the manufacturer creates a car and the brakes don't function, it's not an intended death trap. It's a byproduct death trap because it was bad design or bad manufacturing, whatever the case might be. But the author of the blueprints or the automobile giant itself creating it through manufacturing process is not inherently creating death traps.
Yeah,
knowingly.
but I think death trap here is not
all
necessarily
pure
related to traps
context.
because it just means something is dangerous.
Can you survive a death trap?
Potentially.
No, because it wouldn't be a death trap. I should say you can't survive a death trap inherently on your own. Outside forces would have to intercede in order to keep it out. For example, if you're stuck in a well and you're going to die from starvation, but if somebody throws down a rope and you can climb out of there or get pulled out of there, it's not a death trap anymore. But that's because somebody else interfered. If your leg's stuck in a bear trap and you're bleeding out and you're going to die, but somebody comes along, breaks it, pulls it apart, pulls your leg out, bandages your leg, carries you to a medical station, and you get treatment and you survive.
Yeah, I don't think
It's not a
death
death
traps
trap anymore.
necessarily need to be
More or less, a
100%
death
lethal.
trap happens as an outcome of what happens to the trap.
No, I don't think so.
If you're stuck in something and you can't get out and you die because being stuck, it's a death trap. If you don't die and you are able to escape it, it's not a death trap. It's like Schrodinger's trap, if you will.
No.
You're either one or
Death
the other.
trap, I'm pretty sure, would be a trap that tries to kill you.
Why does it have to actively try to kill you? Passive would work
Because
as well.
you can survive.
You can?
Yes.
How is it a death trap if you can survive?
Because it is very likely that you die in a death trap.
Why is it very likely that you die?
Because it's possible to escape.
By yourself?
Potentially, if you have the means.
Because I agree that a death trap can not be a death trap if outside interactions change the actual setting of what's going on. For example, you're in that room with the bookshelf that burned and fell over the door so you can't get out. But if a firefighter comes over and clears the debris and opens the door, it's no longer a death trap. But if the firefighter never showed up, it's a death trap.
No. Okay, so the burning building would be a death trap because it's a very dangerous place.
It's a dangerous trap, yes, but it's not a
That
death trap.
is very likely to kill you, but it is possible that you somehow break out
How would you do that?
by breaking the trap.
How would you do that? We didn't clarify
I
whether
don't
the
know.
wall made of paper mache or Reddit.
Maybe the person has an axe or whatever that can cut through the walls. I fucking don't care, really.
Maybe it leads you to another area that's trapped. Again,
you
might die from smoke inhalation. You might die from actual fire burning. You might die because you went into a
And there's many possible ways of dying is what makes it a death trap.
But that's my point. If you escape it, though, it's not a death trap, and thus death trap is only applied retroactively. Because unless you die from it, it's not a death trap. Or I should say, if something doesn't die from it, it's not. Like, something has to die for it to be a death trap.
I think you're using very strange definitions here.
What strange definition? I'm using the definition of trap and the definition of death.
Because it's used often to describe things people survive from.
Poorly defining something does not mean that's the fault of the person properly defining it.
I don't know.
Well, look, every day we humans communicate and use hyperbole or use exaggeration or all these different things and misuse definitions all the freaking time. I work with coworkers who misuse phrases all the time.
Given enough time, a word changes its meaning to something different potentially.
No, it'd be a definition is added, but usually that ends up becoming a different word. Well, you can't erase what something means because it'll always be that thing to the people who used it while that thing was around.
Right, but death trap in this particular case, I think, is sourced more from a metaphorical perspective rather than actually referring to
Well, there'd be different
traps
types of,
in which
okay,
people
so
die.
if you have a death trap in which it's spinning saw blades at the bottom and you fall into it, there's no option to get out of it because there's no vines or anything to hang on.
Okay, you fall into it, but maybe then
As soon as
it
you hit
only
the
cuts the.
blades, it's a death trap.
Sure,
you die.
but you might not necessarily die if it only cuts off your legs, and then
What comes after the legs? You keep going
Well,
down, and that
no,
gets
but
cut
like
off.
maybe
And that goes down.
maybe
That cuts off.
the saw blades and you fall and then or you fall over and so you're next to it but not in it anymore. I don't know.
Well, that's presuming that this is a very singular saw blade, and
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
else around it's not.
No,
I'm saying,
exactly. But
think of it like
it
a trash
isn't
compactor that grabs things and crunches.
necessary that you die. It's just very likely.
If the entire bottom of this pit is a giant, just bunches of saw blades whizzing past each other, and there's no safe place to land, it's a death trap as soon as you land.
Right. But no, it's a death trap regardless.
But it's not if there's a rope or a vine that you grab onto before you hit it.
No.
It's in if somebody
It doesn't
built
change
it with
the nature of the object.
Well, it does. Because if it's an Indiana Jones and that pit's there and there's spikes or saw blades or whatever it might be, but he catches himself with his whip, its intention by the person who built it was to be a death trap.
To be a death trap, and
but it didn't turn out to be a death trap, unless of course there's a corpse down there and somebody else already died from it. But it didn't turn out to be for that other person, Indiana Jones specifically, to be a death trap for Indiana Jones.
So it is a death trap, but Indiana Jones survives it.
Because the actual what's the term using it? The requirement is that somebody dies from it for it to become a death trap. Well, because if they don't die from it, there is no death, and thus it's just a trap.
Yeah, but why is it important that someone actually dies rather than that the intent of the trap is for them to die?
If there were spikes and somebody was supposed to fall into it, and like there's no corpses, there's no bones, there's no nothing, and Indiana Jones falls into it and he dies, it's a death trap. But if there's no bones, there's no corpses, and he doesn't fall because of his a rope or his whip or something,
because he escaped the trap,
it was a trap.
It was still a death trap.
Only if death is the outcome.
No,
it could be intended to be a death trap, but if nobody dies from it, it's not a death trap.
No, that's a silly way of looking at it.
How do you create a death trap?
By making it so that it is supposed to kill people.
Death is the outcome for whoever falls in it.
Yeah, but
if nobody falls in it,
just because it fails in its intention does not mean it's not that thing.
Under the other possible requirements, like somebody else had fallen into it, like a different adventurer other than Indy, had fell in it, and they died because of it. Yes, because the requirement has been met. The requirement was somebody died. It is a death trap. It succeeded in the thing it was intended to do.
Right, but it was still the same thing before that first person fell into it.
A death trap, but it is not Indy's death trap because Indy did not fall in it as a trap and it did not kill him.
And that's traps aren't person specific.
Well, they're requirement specific. If nothing's in it, it's not trapped.
So a bear trap that hasn't trapped a bear is not a trap.
It is a trap, but nothing is trapped. But in order to be trapped, you have to be in a trap.
Yes. Well, no.
Yes. Yeah, gotcha. It's qualifiers. A qualifier for something to be something.
Yeah, but death trap doesn't mean what you think it does.
A death trap is where something dies and it's trapped.
Where something is very likely to die because you can always escape.
You can't always. That's another qualifier of additional information.
There is always the possibility that something escapes.
There's also a possibility the sun's actually a ball of cheese.
No, that's not actually possible.
It's not?
No.
It's not probable. It's possible.
We went there.
You, good sir, cannot check the inside of the sun. I'd like to point that out. Thank you very much. It's cheese gas. That's why. It always
Okay,
burns.
okay, fair enough. It's cheese gas. What even
But-
is cheese gas?
Well, have you never seen old cheese in the room? It's just like basically light a match, you blow the whole place up.
Okay, fair enough.
It's what you call a death trap.
Yes, but no one has died yet, so you don't
It's
actually.
not yet, but when it happens, it will be a death trap.
But what if they survive?
I don't know how you're going to survive an explosion like that because I've never seen anybody
Well.
survive that kind of explosion.
It could be a smaller one.
It's like a nuclear explosion, small radius.
It's not like a nuclear explosion.
How do you know? Have you ever exploded cheese gas before, good sir?
Well, it's not a nuclear explosion. I've known that much.
How can you know? You've never experienced a cheese gas or ever even tested one.
Because it's not nuclear.
How do you know? You've never
Because it's
experienced it.
just
You've never tested
regular
it. You don't know.
gas.
How is it regular gas?
Because it's cheese gas.
Where's your peer-reviewed scientific methodology review stuff? Like,
Whatever.
you've never done it. You can't say it isn't. It's just as probable.
It's not just as probable.
Well, if you've never tested it, you can't say it is or isn't anything because you didn't test it. So it's as probable as anything else. You can guesstimate that it's not probable, but
Yes.
you can't say it is.
No, I'm saying it isn't.
Yes, go make claims without evidence. That always ends well for scientists.
No, this is common sense. Cheese gas is not as powerful as a nuclear explosion.
Well, that depends on the requirements required. A nuclear bomb is not explosive unless you have it triggered by like a warhead.
Yes, we're talking about the explosions, obviously.
Well, yes, but you've never
didn't
had
say-
an explosion of
I
cheese
didn't
gas,
say
so you
a
don't know
nuclear
what the other
explosion.
components are.
No, because it's made of cheese, and cheese is not as energy dense.
Unless you add another component that makes it energy dense.
Yeah, but then it's
The
not
whole
cheese
point of
anymore.
testing it. Well, cheese could still be a component.
No,
Are you saying if you have a nuclear bomb and you add cheese to it, it's not nuclear cheese?
it's not nuclear cheese. It's a
What?
nuclear bomb with cheese.
Which is nuclear cheese. The cheese
No.
will blow up and you'll die.
I guess the cheese would become nuclear after the bomb explodes. Maybe.
And you died from that nuclear cheese.
Maybe if you eat it.
Well, no, the cheese would obliterate with everything else in the nuclear fission or whatever.
Wow. Yeah. Could be very
That
strong.
roach.
cheese.
Those stupid roaches, man. How about roach cheese? That'll kill you.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, no, that would probably do it.
Back to structure. Traps have a structure. Story has
Yeah,
a structure.
traps have a structure, and that structure requires intent. That's my
it doesn't
thesis.
require. You
I'll leave
believe
with
it
that
does.
because it's now much more than half an hour later.
Well, you only said a half hour. My point for structures of the story or structures in general, right?
Yeah.
There's not only necessarily one structure in world
Sure.
building. There are multiples.
Mhm.
Plot is one structure, characters are one structure, development is another
Sure.
structure. There's subcategories like plot development, character
Mhm.
development, etc.
Sure.
They all break down. So
Lots of stuff.
for these things, they don't have to be physical. Plot is not physical, it is totally metaphysical.
Yeah. Okay.
Directions of the storytelling itself is technically metaphysical from the people in the story's perspective.
Sure. Yeah. Let's go with that.
So the structure is built loosely from George's perspective.
Okay. Yeah.
He does not clarify hardly anything.
Okay.
And we
Sure.
have to assume the structures are similar to what we know. The only
Mm-hmm.
structures we know that are different are things like explosions in space or
Well, and the force.
sound. Well, no, I mean, the Force could be always something of a later creation or whatever, or later discovery. Just like the one power.
Yeah, but
One
it's
power
not
is
what we
technically
know
part
now.
of our world. It's not, but it's a reasonable understanding because the Force was explained at least at bare minimum. That's why I argue that what we learn in 4, 5, and 6, that's the Force. Everything else is an accretion.
An accretion.
With the added an accretion, an add-on. Sorry,
I
it's theological.
wouldn't call that an accretion, but sure.
Well, it's something that came later.
Yeah, but accretion has a very specific meaning,
which would be
which would be to absorb stuff that's around you.
and in order to absorb stuff, it has to come later.
Yes, but it's different than adding stuff to something.
But adding stuff to something is something being absorbing other thing.
No.
Doesn't
That's
have to be
different.
literal absorption. It just has to be absorption of a type. Case in point, Catholic doctrines, something that is hypothetically there from the beginning and something that's hypothetically not there from the beginning, and is added to that is an accretion versus dogma and original theology, etc., as like Tolkien would know.
Okay, maybe it works in that situation.
That's the type I'm using. It's an accretion as in terms of what was the core, which is 4, 5, and 6, and then 1, 2, and 3 show up and add content that was not inherently there and adds to what that lore is. It was an accretion of lore. It's a strange word. It's not used very often, but it has that context added to it.
Okay, fair enough. I'll take your word for it.
It's an addition, absorption, whatever you want to call it, but it's something that is not the original, and it is added to that at a later date. A much later date, I might add, like 20-some years late.
Yeah, I don't really know what the time difference is there.
Return of the Jedi was what, 84? Is that right?
Don't know.
84,
I have no idea when films are released. I just know that they exist.
Wasn't
and
the
I
first
like
one
them.
in 76? Wasn't episode 4 in 76?
Could be anything, really.
It's like 70, I think it was 76 to like
It was
84
a long time ago in a galaxy far away.
Yes, but the time of Return of the Jedi till episode 1 was a massive time jump in which other things were added at a later period to the current.
Yeah, sure.
Or what the current belief was. So in that sense, it was something that was not intended or not originally intended to be there.
Not originally, yeah, sure.
But became later on. So what we know is the Force, because it was intentionally created that way specifically, is 4, 5, and 6. 1, 2, and 3 came along and was like, we're going to add little tidbits. But if you add those tidbits, they have to logically follow with the rest of 4, 5, and 6. And you could technically add on, but all we know of so far is 4, 5, and 6. Everything additional would have to line up. If it doesn't line up and it contradicts 4, 5, and 6, then we can't follow that as what the Jedi would be accurately following. So when the Jedi have rules and they say, oh, well, passion is horrible, it's evil, it's whatever.
Yes.
And then you're like, but what about the users of the Force and the rest of the galaxy?
They're all evil.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
From a certain point of view.
Indeed. From my point of view, the Jedi are evil for one.
I mean, I personally agree with you. But hashtag Revan didn't do anything wrong. But in the terms of what somebody can or cannot do from the Force perspective, like if you were to take the perception of the Force and you're using the Force, but you don't have a code, you don't have a Jedi code, you don't have a Sith code, you don't have any code, and you're just using the Force, what things could you do that are on that list that they say you can't do? I'd argue everything.
I mean, I don't really know what's on the list specifically.
Well, we pulled it up at one point. I believe, like anger, like emotions and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, emotions are bad.
There is no emotion. There is peace. Well,
but there is emotion. It's simply wrong, obviously.
Yeah. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge.
No, but there is ignorance, obviously.
There is ignorance because the Jedi Code is ignorant of how the Force works. There's no passion, there's serenity. I'm like...
I mean, I guess I can see that.
Well, no, because passion and serenity do not necessarily overlap. They're not like parallels, or like it's not like a crisscross. They're like slightly angled. They're not necessarily going to intersect at every possible point, but they're not necessarily never touching either.
Yeah, okay, sure. Let's go with that.
So, for example, the Empire/Sith says peace is a lie. There's only passion, which is the
Mhm.
opposite to there's no emotion. There's peace. The Sith say through passion I gain strength,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
through the
Sure.
Jedi there's no ignorance. There is knowledge. And then for the Sith, there's through strength I gain power, which they got from passion. And let's put it this way: the Sith goes from the first one, leads to the second one, which leads to the third one, which leads to the fourth one, which leads to the fifth one. The Jedi doesn't have any of that. It's all individual statements. Like
Yeah.
there's no emotion, there's peace. There's no ignorance, there's knowledge. There's no passion, there's serenity. There's no chaos, there's harmony. There's no death, there's the Force. But the Sith are like, the peace is a lie. There's only passion. Through passion I gain strength. Through strength I gain power. Through power I gain victory. Through victory my chains are broken. The Force shall free me. See, those things line up and
wait a
lead to
minute.
the next things.
Are we the baddies on the Jedi side?
You sure about that?
Hmm. Because
But
the Sith way seems.
well, the Sith is a sequential pattern. They one thing leads to another thing.
Yeah,
leads
yeah.
to
No,
another
but
thing,
they
leads to another
also.
thing, and ends with an outcome.
It doesn't actually sound all that bad.
Well, it technically isn't. They just take it to the extreme, arguably. I wouldn't say every Sith
enough.
ever goes to the extreme. Not every Sith is Darth Malgus or Darth Plagueis or, whichever Darth you want.
Darth, whatever, right?
Yeah. Darth
Because
Count.
they all have
Darth
Darth
Sidious, yeah.
names for some reason.
Yeah. Well, Darth is a title, just like Count would be
Yeah,
a
yeah,
title.
because surely they didn't choose that specifically to sound evil, right?
Well, I don't think Darth is an evil term. It's just we always only ever hear it attached to evil people.
Yeah, no, but it sounds like
Just like why you argue that Jedi, like Jedi Knight or Jedi Master, it's a title, but it's a
yeah, but that has a neutral sound.
well, no. You just every time we hear Jedi, we assume it's a good person because of how the
No, we
story
don't.
conditioned us to believe. Well, yes, if you hear Jedi, you're like, oh, well, they're not going to use their passion, their strength, power.
Yeah, no, of
victory,
course,
and-
because they don't believe in
Strength.
passion. They think there's
I know,
all
but
those
that's what I'm
shitty
saying.
things.
Because the correlation.
No, but see, the word Jedi it sounds relatively neutral. It doesn't
why
have
does
it
it sound neutral?
because it doesn't evoke.
Why does Jedi sound neutral and Darth doesn't sound neutral?
Because Darth is similar to dark.
Darth sounds like dark, thus it must be dark.
Yes.
That's not how that works.
No, I mean it's the specific sounds involved in it associated
So
with those general things.
if they were called Viscounts,
Yeah, that would be fine.
why would that be fine, but Darth not? Because in the world of Star Wars, Darth is just a title. They either grant themselves or people grant to them, and they
Because of
accept
the
that title.
sound of the title.
Well, metal music
It's the
sounds evil
specific-
to some people, but is not necessarily evil.
Yeah, but I'm not saying it's necessarily evil. I'm saying it sounds that way.
But that's what I'm saying, is a sounding evil does not make something evil.
No, I'm not saying it does.
But if Darth
I'm
sounds
just saying
evil,
they went for
Jedi
a very
sounds
awkward.
good.
No, it doesn't sound good. It sounds neutral
Why does it sound neutral?
because
Why
it
do you
doesn't.
believe it sounds neutral?
Because it doesn't have specific sounds in it that are associated with good typically.
Well, I mean, it's lacking bad sounds, so that sounds pretty good.
I guess you could argue that, but it's also
But
lacking.
I would
good
argue
sounds.
the sound for Darth and the sound for Jedi is not why people assign good and evil to them.
No,
It's
no,
their behaviors.
no.
Typically.
But the words are specifically chosen in the story because they sound dark for Darth.
Is that why George Lucas came up with those terms?
I think so.
You think so?
Otherwise, he would have called them friendly people or something.
Well, no, he could have called them Viscount.
Yeah, but he didn't.
Viscount Vader, Viscount Dooku, although he's
Mhm.
already Count Dooku, technically.
I can't count. Wait a minute.
He's got
No, but
double
see,
titles.
If he had chosen Viscount, it wouldn't have the necessarily evil association with it.
I mean, Viscount sounds a lot more evil than Count. So if you had Viscount
Why?
Vader and Count Obi-Wan,
Why do
or
you
Count
think
Kenobi.
Viscount sounds more evil than Count?
It just inherently sounds eviler.
Right. It inherently sounds eviler. That's your argument.
That's your argument for.
I'm saying that's exactly the reason Darth is an evil sounding title.
But when you're asking me, like, you think Viscount sounds evil? Your incredulousness was proof that that's not how that actually works.
No, it does sound a bit evil.
Does it? What if I say
Slightly.
Duke?
I don't think so.
Duke Vader. Does that sound evil?
No.
But it starts with a D, and so does Darth, and that's correlation, right?
Yeah, but see, it's not the D that is alone.
That's what she said.
Yes.
But that's my point, is that when you
It's a
have
combination of sounds, not just.
well, if you say Sith Lord versus Jedi Master, is one more evil than the other? Because I don't think Sith Lord sounds eviler than Jedi Master would be, because Master versus Lord is inherently not evil or good. It's just a
Master
title.
Is typically
Actually, Master sounds
associated-
worse, honestly. But
No, it just sounds worse from an American point of view.
no, not even American point of view. Just like in terms of someone being ahead, like even
See, Jedi
it's a-
Master sounds good because Master, in this case, specifies that they have mastered a particular thing.
well, it's just like a master blacksmith versus an apprentice
Yes.
blacksmith. That's the difference.
So it
Yeah.
shows, it tries to show that the Jedi Masters are
But is
really
a
good
lord
at
higher
doing
than a
their thing.
master, though?
Sith Lords sounds evil because it
No, it
comes
doesn't.
from. It sounds more evil than Jedi Master because it
Well, I mean, I'm
comes
just
with
comparing
the
Lord,
Lords,
but Lord is just
which
a person
is
who controls a bunch of others.
yeah, but it's in this particular context anti-freedom because it's a hierarchical title that comes with the association of
You
tyranny.
mean like a republic
Yes.
that votes democratically, which is
Mhm.
ruling over somebody by mob?
Yes.
That seems like a problem for your argument there, good sir.
No, not really. They're democratically voted, so it's not tyranny, right? That's how that works until someone
But
takes over.
if your half plus 1% votes in favor of something that oppresses me, that is tyranny.
Then you just chose wrongly.
No, it means I'm going to be oppressed.
Yes.
It's democracy.
No, but
is the illusion of freedom.
democracy is illusion of freedom,
I literally just said that.
right? Illusion is the key word there because it doesn't.
Freedom
It's
doesn't
not
exist.
associated with tyranny.
No, it's a word that makes tyranny sound a lot better.
Yes,
But freedom
Lord
itself is
does
illusion.
not have that making it sound better part.
But master, who is ruler over somebody else underneath them, is
No,
they're technically
because
the same.
master in this
on a different
case
scale.
intends to show mastery of the force and the lightsaber skills.
Just like lords show lordship over their property or
yeah, but
territory
lordship
or-
is inherently not democratic.
okay. Neither are masters usually.
No, but that's because it's not related to rulership.
Well, you're ruling over your apprentices. You have authority over
No,
your
you're teaching your apprentices
you
mastery
have
of
authority
the
over
things that you have mastered because they submit themselves willingly to your guidance.
them. Technically, if you move into a lordship's territory, you are submitting yourself to them
Yeah, but the people that live there are forced to.
to follow
Also
the
do
rules of the person they submit to. Yes, just like an
Yeah, but you
apprentice
can
to a Jedi.
live in the Republic without joining the Jedi.
Yes, but you're still under the thumb of somebody in authority.
Yes, but that's not a Jedi. Well, there could be, but
It could be.
it's the Senate, right? They're not necessarily Jedi.
So what you're saying is Jedi and Sith are the exact same.
No,
That's what they are. Well,
because the
what about
Sith
those?
are in
what about
charge. Well,
those
they should
who-
be in charge
What
of their
about those?
empire.
Well, yes, and the Republic
But
is
the
in charge
Republic
of its
is not
territory.
ruled by the Jedi.
Well, technically, the Sith aren't necessarily in charge of their empire.
Well, I mean,
Because the
I'm
Empire
not sure on the
could
exact
exist without.
details.
So if Emperor Palpatine died, does the entirety of the rest of the Imperial Empire?
No, that's not
Not
that's not
necessarily.
the Sith Empire though.
Well, I didn't say Sith Empire explicitly.
No, but I said Sith Empire.
Well,
And you
the thing
immediately
is that
associated with Palpatine.
not all. Well, no, I heard Empire. I didn't hear Sith. So if you said Sith, I apologize. I didn't hear that. But Empire, or if it's a Sith Empire, does not mean all Sith are on the same side.
No, but see,
So the Sith are notoriously hard to get along with each
in
other.
the history / background, I vaguely remember that you had the Republic, which was semi-democratic, I guess, versus the Sith Empire.
Are you talking High Republic, or are you talking Old
I
Republic?
don't know which Republic. I don't. I just know
Probably
that's
Old
a
Republic. Old Republic's when like
Could
the
be.
Sith Empire is around.
Maybe that one.
Because New Republic is
right.
after Emperor
It's
Palpatine.
the free republic-ish region.
Well, they're all
versus
free
the-
republics until they're not.
versus the tyrannical Sith Empire, which has.
But when you say
hierarchical
tyrannical,
lordship.
could be argued is just order and not chaos, where the Republic could be just chaos
Perhaps,
from a certain perspective.
but that is not the intention, probably, of George Lucas. I don't know.
Road to Hell is paved with good intentions. We've already had that discussion.
Yes.
My
Anyway.
point is that you could argue that you are under a Sith Lord and it not be bad. It
Yeah,
could not
that's
even be
possible.
tyrannical.
That's
But
why
you
I
could
said
also-
maybe the
you could
Sith aren't
also-
actually the bad guys.
You could also be under the Republic and be oppressed dramatically.
But they do have a severe issue in their PR branch.
This is true. I mean, I'd say that the Republic has a PR issue of being intelligent and, good.
Yeah, no, that means they have a good PR branch.
No, they have a bad PR branch because everybody knows they're not, despite people thinking that they think they are.
Okay, but it's a better one than the Sith have.
Well, some Sith, yes, but other Sith not so bad. Again, Sith is kind of throws all of a category for the most of Star Wars. I want to say theology. They throw all Sith and all non-Jedi users into the Sith category when they're not necessarily, because there's a difference between like when you go back to the Jedi Code, it says there is no passion, there's serenity, and it's like, well, there's anger and then there's righteous anger. Righteous anger would be considered under the Force because, again, back to the concept of what can you do with the Force? Can a Jedi strike down on somebody who's a combatant? Well, obviously. Otherwise, what's the point of having a lightsaber? What's the point of having a blaster? What's the point of controlling a group of troopers to do something if you're not allowed to kill anyone?
No, but if you just serenely cut them down, right?
But if you have righteous anger and you cut somebody
mostly peaceful murder.
Well, it can't be mostly peaceful murder. It'd be mostly peaceful killing. But if you have like, who was it that in the Acolyte? There's a situation.
I don't know. I never watched.
I'm giving you the scene, and you have to explain to me if it makes sense according to Star Wars logic of what's going on. So the scene, you have Master Soul, Korean guy.
Okay.
And he's
Is that
fighting
important
furiously.
that he's Korean?
No, that's why his name is Soul, and
Okay.
he's from Squid Games. But so he's fighting, and he's pretty furious. Like his emotions are running wild. Like
he's a bad Jedi.
All of the Jedi in the show are bad Jedi. Let's put it that way.
Okay, that's fair.
But the way he's described, they say in the show is like, you can't kill somebody who's unarmed. So they disarm a Sith.
Okay.
Can you kill the Sith?
No,
Why not?
because
You can't
he's
let him
unarmed, right?
Well,
Ooh,
according to their rules, according to the rules they give in the show, you cannot. That's not.
Oh, we're not following those rules?
This is Disney rules. I'm
Okay.
saying the Disney rules make sense according to the actual Jedi Code.
No, it's not.
Because, for example, if you have a hostile person
Mm-hmm.
and they're fighting you and they're actively trying to kill you and you knock their weapon away, can you still kill them? In a
I would
conflict?
say yes.
And the show says, no, you can't do that. And then the guy gets up and proceeds to kill more people.
But they're still hostile, though, so
Yes.
why
But
does the
show's
weapon
like,
matter?
No, because if you kill the guy, then you'll be embracing the dark side. That
What?
doesn't make sense.
No.
So
If you just have to kill them without emotion, and it's fine.
but even if you kill them with emotion, because again, the Jedi Code says no emotion, the Force does not require that.
Yeah, but that just means you're a bad Jedi, not a bad Force user.
I will grant you that one. But that's what I'm saying is what is required to use the Force and be strong in the Force? Like, could you be a random Force user in the galaxy somewhere that's 35 or something, and the Jedi finds you and you
Why
just like
35?
because you're too old for them to train or whatever.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I just picked an
12
arbitrary number.
would be enough, right?
Well, I know, but I'm saying like you're the person who's been communing with the Force for years,
Yeah.
or whatever, and you have access to the Force. You're not always serene. You have righteous indignation. You have ferocity, but you're not necessarily embracing evil, and at the same time. So
Yeah, I mean,
you can go to town hammering on somebody. You don't have to have a stylish art.
no,
form or
if
whatever.
you do that without the weapon, so they can't fight back.
Well, if you're aggressively punching at somebody, they would consider that a weapon. So
No.
you have to be count nuclear treatment, get your hands cut off, but you can still use your elbows. So, all right, then we'll call it a draw. But that's the point. Is like, at what point is combat over? Because if you have them restrained and they can't do anything,
yeah,
and
I mean,
they're
then sure,
literally
don't
shut
kill
down,
them.
that would be murder technically. But they're not technically innocent because during this fight, when he disables the Sith guy, or the alleged Sith guy, he had already butchered like 12 Jedi. So at what point is it okay
12?
to stop him? Like, yeah, like there's like a couple Jedi Masters, a bunch of Jedi Knights, and a couple Padawans.
Wow. Jedi really went back downhill.
There's literally a ridiculous scene where he stabs a Jedi through the chest or gut or whatever.
Okay,
and
yeah.
then force pulls other Jedi onto it to make a Jedi shish kebab.
Oh, that's actually a good technique, probably.
It would be if Jedi can't counter that, which they can.
Now, maybe these were all,
One of them was
DEI
Jedi
Jedis or
Master.
something.
A couple. That's all of Disney is DEI Jedi. What are you talking about? But the idea is cool. But we know that you can counter with the Force somebody else's Force.
Yeah.
And right then, you know that the Sith can commune with the Force in their own way, and the Jedi can commune with the Force in their own way. So the Force isn't favoring one over the other. One could argue you are stronger in one side of the Force than the other side of the Force. But what if there's a third method, or a fourth method, or a fifth method, or a sixth method, or seventh method, and thus everybody that's a Force user in the galaxy, and possibly even further, is
But then we get
using the
into
Force.
anime wizard territory where everyone has their own special superpower magic.
Well, no, because they're all using the same pool. It's just what kind of techniques, what level of techniques, how much power they have inherent, how much power they have to pull upon. Same thing for the one power. Like,
Yeah.
you have Moraine has at her full strength is severely weaker than Rand because Rand's the strongest. But she still has her own techniques, her own little tricks that Rand doesn't know and that Rand can't do. But on the opposite side, Rand has his own tricks that he can do that she can't do. So they're all different, but they all can communicate with the one power. And the same thing with the Force is that if the Force is utilizing this in this whatever method, the way they're doing logically, even to their own code, doesn't make sense. Because if you can't kill, according to Disney's side, if you can't kill a hostile evil being, now keep in mind, the same girl who tells Soul, which is Osha, tells him he can't kill him because that goes against the rules or whatever. So Soul doesn't do it when he could have just lopped his head off and then that would have been the end of it. But she's like, you can't do this or you go to the dark side. Like the next episode or the episode afterwards, she grabs the Sith guy's blade, puts it to his neck like she's trying to kill him. And he's literally not being hostile to her at all.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make
But
sense. in that
that's
regard.
that's mostly because the writers just don't watch the previous episodes.
Oh, dude, you have no freaking idea how inconsistent the show is. But that's the thing, is like
No,
if
that's
this
just
was,
the new method of writing shows in.
well, I know, but I'm saying is
over
that
there.
if it was George Lucas who pulled that, I would argue that did not count as canon
Sure.
because he's not following his own rules that he placed. Matt would argue that's my opinion. He can have that opinion, but I'm not calling it my opinion. I'm saying that literally destroying your own continuity does not count as canon because canon wouldn't by definition mean it has to continue.
No.
So when does canon stop being the same thing and completely warps itself on its head?
Unclear.
So if it's unclear, it leans towards the idea that it stops being canon. Like if the Force exists, everyone's using the Force, and then all of a sudden the Force doesn't exist, but people are still using Force powers.
Mm-hmm.
Does that not break canon?
Possibly.
Well, not if it's the same guy who created it, apparently. Like, that to me is inconsistent. Like, canon is the same thing that keeps going and going and going and becomes the same thing over and over again. And just it all of it makes sense in this tube. It's a constant tunnel of the same world limitations. If you break out of those limitations, you left the tube, thus you left the canon, and you went to something else. Now, if you have the tube change directions, but it's still in the tube, but it goes a different direction, but it's still logically consistent with everything else, something might have changed, but it's still consistent, it would still be canon. That's how I understand canon can work. So George Lucas could change, like, basically 4, 5, and 6 is a canon going this way. 1, 2, and 3 is a divergence, but it's still in the same pipe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's not a whole lot of things that break it. And if they are things that break it, it's inconsistencies on a minor scale as opposed to world-breaking scale. Does that make sense? Is that fair enough?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
But it is getting really late now.
You're such a baby. You and your commie time limits for beds.
Yes. Well, I can't be up, otherwise I might get arrested. You know, that's.
Well, why do I care?
Well, I care. Because
Nobody asked you. You can still talk about the Force from inside the jail cell. But anyway,
I'm not sure I can actually.
I'm not sure how much of this we actually got to like explain what I wanted to explain because it kept getting obviously derailed.
Derailed really badly.
But I'm hoping the concept of what the Jedi say you can do versus what you're actually allowed to do according to the Force is not the necessity or necessary thing and the necessary outcome. Just like the Sith can access the Force and the Jedi can access the Force.
Yeah, but that's just because it's an in-world organization with their own set of rules. It doesn't necessarily mean they're correct.
Yes, but people like to say that the Jedi are correct. But I also don't care if they're correct or incorrect. I care if what they actually can and can't do with the Force follows their own rules, whether it be in the movies, whether it be in the books, whether it be in the comics.
No, but the rules don't say anything about what you can do with the Force, just what you can do in general.
There's the Force healing, literal almost death, as opposed to not being able to Force heal, because up until it says in the EU a specific instance happened, Force healing wasn't a thing. So it's not a thing.
But that's not in the code of the Jedi. The Jedi Code doesn't specifically say, "Oh, you can push people with the Force. You can."
But that's where I was. That's why I was aiming more in a
objects,
combat. In a combat situation, can you kill somebody serenely?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's more about
But in a murder capacity, and still have a connection to the Force.
Why not?
Well, because you're doing something evil.
Yeah, but the Sith do evil stuff all the time. They're fine.
Yes, but there's an argument that the Sith are less powerful in the long term because of the way they do it. Where the Jedi is argued that they have a long-term better connection, but short-term is weaker than
Sith. Maybe. I
don't
know.
Like Darth Malgus could take on 5 Jedi Knights or possibly 5 Jedi Masters by himself because he's really powerful. But long term, he's not going to have the ultimate amount of power where the Jedi can keep going up, where it's like the Sith plateau, but really early. versus the Jedi Knights and Jedi Masters, they incline. Kind of like think Dragon Ball Z, where Goku can
But
like
why?
get really strong, but over time. But what do you mean about why?
Why would that be the case?
Why would what be the case?
That
Specify.
the Sith plateau, whereas the Jedi sort of do
I
gradual.
don't know the reason for it. I just know that's the argument people make. Is like when you have Sith versus Jedi in terms of how they deal with the Force, Sith go up really fast.
No, that's a
and
stupid
then
argument.
plateau. Well, is it?
I
What
think
arguments
so.
are there against it?
Because it comes out of nowhere.
Does it come out of what? Allegedly, they have arguments for it, so it didn't come out of nowhere. Technically,
Okay, well, I haven't seen the arguments exactly, but it seems like it comes out of nowhere.
that's why I wanted. The whole purpose of having this conversation was trying to have those things kind of beaten out and then know
Could
where
be.
they stand.
But I also really don't know too much about Star Wars beyond the movies.
I know a
and
little bit of the
basic
EU.
details
I know the
from the EU.
movies. I also know that Disney canon does not align with George Lucas canon almost at all.
Yeah, because it's not George Lucas stuff.
Well, yes, but Brandon Sanderson's not Robert Jordan, but he did pull a lot of it.
Yeah, okay.
Robert Jordan style.
But that's because he specifically worked with
He actually
Robert
put effort in
to make it good, I guess.
Well, Robert Jordan notes, but yes.
Yeah, but he had a whole discussion stuff
Well, he talked
with
to
him.
Harriet. He didn't talk to Robert Jordan.
No, he talked to Robert Jordan before he died, right?
I'm pretty sure after Jordan passed, Harriet was calling people up and having them complete it.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
That's what I remember is that he got.
I thought he talked with Robert Jordan specifically.
I mean, he might have had a conversation with him in the past at like a con or something. I don't know, but from what I recall from the conversation that Harriet and Brandon Sanderson said that she contacted him and asked him if he would finish the series, and then he went over and saw the notes. Never mentioned anything about meeting him directly. That he used his notes, yes.
Yeah.
He actually talked about him. Maybe he did. That just wasn't brought up in the conversation. I feel like that.
I'm not entirely sure. But it's also.
But either way, I wish I knew a lot of people. I wish I knew a lot of people who had a lot of information on this, because I only know a couple people that I do not have access to that have that kind of knowledge, like Ryan Cannell. But I want the conversation because I want it to make sense a bit more about the Star Wars universe and to hold the Jedi, the Sith, Grey Jedi, anybody's perspective of like what could happen. Because I personally, if it was still George Lucas's Star Wars, I personally would love to see other Force users of neither of those factions, or none of those factions, pop up and see how they behave and what goes which way. But in order to know how powerful they would be or whatever, we have to know what the Force is, and we still haven't nailed down exactly what the Force is. It's too open-ended with not a lot of knowledge. So for all we know, somebody comes along and is like 10,000 times more powerful than Vader, and completely on accident. And as far as I'm aware, Vader was the strongest Force user, correct? Which would make sense considering he's the only being created from the Force.
I mean,
directly.
it makes sense, yeah.
We know Luke was powerful, but
I don't have a list of power rankings, to be honest. So
I'm pretty confident Darth Vader is the most powerful Force
that
user.
makes it. Well, Luke, maybe.
No, Luke was powerful, but he wasn't as powerful as Vader. I mean, he got pwned by Vader multiple times.
Yeah, okay, but like at some point he did eventually beat him.
Well, he didn't beat him; he converted him.
Yeah, which is the same thing.
No, it's not. In a Force versus Force battle, Luke wasn't winning. In a arguments perspective, Luke can win. Yeah, but either way, that's why I wanted to have the conversation. Yeah. I know it didn't really turn out the way I wanted it to, and maybe we'll come revisit this at another point. Hopefully, if we can get more people. I think it would have been nicer if we had Arturian and Gadfly here. That might help, but I know Gadfly is not keen to talk about Star Wars because Star Wars is dead to him. But I'd like to talk about I'd like to talk about non-Disney Star Wars and just be like, how does this formulate together and how does this become a thing? Like, what makes what happen the way it happens and all that kind of stuff. But I guess we'll do that another time so I can let you go to your commie sleep.
Yes.
So I'll put us into the outro. But thanks everybody for hanging out. Thanks Sage for holding on as long as you did. I know the commies are banging on your door to drink you off
Yeah.
your gulags, but
I might be gone for a few weeks
I
because
don't
of
think
that.
if you're going to gulag, you're coming back. Just saying.
Well,
But
maybe
yeah,
if I escape.
they're just going to come back to where you live and pick you up again.
Wow.
Unless you
Who
can make
knows?
it to America, then you have a little freedom in your life. But yeah.
Perhaps.
But yeah, so thanks everybody for listening in and hanging out with us. If you don't mind giving us a little like or commenting or sharing this with somebody else if you think they want to be annoyed by our pedantry and technicalities, because that is literally what I am. I am the living essence of pedantry and technicality. But if you had fun with this or whatever, or you can understand, because I mean, obviously we come from different perspectives for a lot of things. All three of us have our own views on something. Sometimes we end up agreeing, other times we don't. But maybe you can tell where we're all coming from individually, and maybe you can see the bridges in which we are passing each other by on. Let us know in the comments what you think on that. If you enjoyed it, give us a like, share it with people if you want to get their opinions, or you think we'd love to hear their opinions or something. It greatly helps us out. It's a way to support us without having to monetarily, since we don't have a monetary system really set up for that. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. If we revisit Star Wars, hopefully we'll get more information built into some of these questions and whatnot. But until then, we'll just call that good here. Thank you, Sir Sage. Matt's doing a bunch of different
Stuff.
yeah, he's all over YouTube, jumping in people's stuff, checking out the Acolyte and stuff, and I can't be bothered. So
Yeah.
he's already doing it. But yeah, we'll go ahead and leave it there. And thanks everybody for hanging out with us. And remember, my friends, walk in the light.
Farewell.